coming up on the stage because I had it understood. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show, everybody. Yeah, I didn't do the warning thing. I didn't set it up the normal way I normally set it up, but it's all right because we're here right now. So you guys didn't get your 10-minute warning before we got started, but it's all right. It's all right. It's all right. So I hope everybody had a great weekend. Had a pretty good weekend myself. It's funny, you know. There's a common saying that goes, "There's no hate like Christian love," or something like that. And it's interesting. I went up to, as you guys know, I said before, you know, my wife, uh, actually, it's more recently family members who are Native Americans. But even if she wasn't, it really doesn't matter. That's neither here nor there in the conversation. But we went up to a powwow in San Marcos this weekend. And, you know, thought I'd share a little culture with people. Like, hey, you know, here's a little thing. Ain't no love like Christian hate, boy. Or however that go. I ain't no hate like Christian love. I was not surprised, but yet still surprised at the Christians who come onto the page and when I make those lives, and they making their little comments. This is evil. You know, I rebuke you. Or someone trying to say, well, let me get to that part. You know, people trying to rebuke the fact that I was sharing with you guys these Native American powwow that was going on. And yet, regardless of how much we talk on here or what we talk about, the fact that a person can't appreciate another person's culture, that you got to interject your Christianity into their culture. This is what caused the native tribes to have to be forced into Christianity, is the Christian mindset towards their culture. I thought that was just interesting to me. I just, just trying to share a little somebody culture. Then of course I have people like, oh, you're pretending in now? Like, nah, dude. So if I go and I watch Riverdance, does that mean that I'm trying to be Irish? Fuck no, it's just Riverdance was cool as shit, and I liked it. So it shows the small-mindedness of Christians, and I don't know, maybe I'll do another video and get more into detail about that in a video later on today. But I don't know if you guys have seen that or noticed that, but it's just the small-mindedness of Christianity was on full display when I went to that powwow, and how some of the people were responding to it. So I can't wait to go to the next one, honestly, especially if you saw that video. Now, if you didn't see it, and my live kept going out because the signal was horrible where we were located. Signal was horrible. But I just recorded the Aztec dancers. The Aztec dancers, that was the show right there. Mm-hmm. The Aztec dancers were the show. Now, on to our show today. Like I said, I do a video later on about the small-mindedness of Christians, and how that has disrupted throughout history. I'll do a video about that after we're done here and I eat lunch. So, but right now, our subject matter today is going to be concerning Joshua and the walls of Jericho, that it never happened at all, and how once again we will demonstrate how Christians tend to ignore history, how they tend to ignore archaeology. Now, most people just go ahead and assume and accept the fact that the walls of Jericho came tumbling down when Joshua and the Israelites supposedly came across from the Exodus to take the promised land. Now, to give you the background on the story, we're not going to go through the whole Exodus, but when they first left, and I know a lot of deconstructionists get caught up in the fact that they was wandering around for 40 years. You have to get into, when you're explaining this to people, when you're talking to people about this, you can't just say the old little adage that many people like to do and say that, oh, well, it's only a 3 or 6 day walk from Egypt to the Jordan River. Why did it take them 40 years? That doesn't make sense. Okay, we know that within the story, but within the story, they do make it there within a few days. They supposedly walk to where Jericho is in not that long of time frame. The problem occurs is that once they get there, spies are sent over to look and verify who's in Jericho. The spies come back. All the spies are like, they're giants. They were going to be defeated. Why is God trying to? God, you brought us out here to kill us and all this nonsense. But only Joshua and Caleb are like, hell no, we can whoop their ass. You know. So the punishment that this guy then delivers to these people is that they got to wander around for 40 years until all the people who came out of Egypt who were over 20 years old, except for Joshua, Caleb, and at that time Moses and Aaron. Well, no, they didn't include Aaron, Moses. Then until everybody's dead, except for those people and those who are under the age of 20, then this guy wasn't going to let them in there. So that's why they wandered for 40 years. It had nothing to do with the distance and how long it would actually take and that sort of thing. So we got to like stop doing that when we're deconstructing from this and telling people, start focusing in on that. So they're walking around for 40 years. And then they supposedly land, you know, all the old people dead, Moses dead, you know. And so Joshua is now the leader. And Joshua is going to bring them into Jericho. Now, before you can really get into it, you have to first establish the dating of it. So you have two ways of establishing when is this time frame, because this is important. Yet it's kind of not important, but it's important. And I'm going to show you at the end of my little spiel of why it's not important. But you need to have this because most people don't think about the date. If you are going based on the Bible, the dating in the Bible, there are two dates for when you can establish this should have happened. The first date and the oldest date that it could have happened, shoulda, coulda, woulda, would have been around 1446 BCE. And the reason why, and we went through this last week when we were just talking about the Exodus story, the reason why 1446 comes into play is because according to 2 Kings, Solomon says in I believe the 8th year of his reign, which puts it at 966, that was 480 years before the Exodus happened. So this is why 1446 is the relative date based on the Bible, that a date that most Christians use. But there's a problem. According to the Exodus story, the Israelite slaves built the city of Pithom and Pi-Ramses. Oftentimes people just call it Pi-Ramses, the city of Pithom and the city of Ramses, but Pithom and Pi-Ramses. So they supposedly built these cities, the Israelite slaves, according to the Exodus story. The problem is that these two cities were not built until 1250 to early 1200s, during the time frame of the reign of Ramesses. This is why Ramesses is oftentimes related to the Exodus story, because it was they know the archaeology of the building of those two cities was done during the time frame of Ramses, and they were cities that were built to hold grain. So we got a problem here. We got like a 200-year problem. Right? These people did not live for 200 years. They didn't wander for 200 years. If they wandered around, if that would work. No, it still wouldn't work. But it's just we got two problems, two different problems with the dating. And that's both are according to the Bible. The Bible says they built those cities. Those cities weren't built until 1250 from around 1250 to 1200. The Bible also says that Solomon's year of reign was 480 years, and that could have just been some mathematical bullshit. And let's be honest, the person who wrote Exodus is not the same person who wrote Kings. The person who wrote Kings would not have had the same mindset, the same time frame, the same univocality, the same biases, the thought processes. And then, of course, if Solomon was king, Solomon can say this. And what are you going to do as a scribe? Say, no, sir, you're wrong. Most of the time in those eras, if you did such a thing, you would be dead. So Solomon said. So it's most likely, so we got this time frame, 12, so we can look at anywhere between 1446 BCE, all the way down to, and really you got to go to 1200. There's some more that doesn't make this story fit, but we're going to go with it anyway. All right. And that more is this. If they had established the city of Jericho, if they had conquered the city of Jericho, established themselves in the city of Jericho in around the 1446, if they were still there during around 1204, then that would mean that the Meneptah Stela, which definitely demonstrates that they were destroyed, that they destroyed a people group called Israelites, not a city. Every other place that the Meneptah Stele said that it was a nation or a city state, it was declared a city state. If the Israelites were living in Jericho, also they would have been living in Ai and started conquering these other places, then the Meneptah Stela would have identified them as a nation or a city state and not had identified them as a wandering nomadic tribe of a people group. So we know that they did not they could not have established themselves around 1400, 1446, but we also understand that they could not have been there in that city at that time frame. If they were, then they are lying, because Meneptah claims he defeated them, so somebody's lying, right? But what we do know is that the Levant was a vassal state of Egypt all the way up until around the 10th century BCE. So all the way up until around, well, 11th, 10th century, all the way up until about somewhere between 900 and 1000 BCE. That's when Egypt lost control of the city of Jericho, of that entire region. So even if you put Joshua and this wall situation in around 1446, they were under Egyptian control in that region at that time. If you place them in the 1200s BCE, they were still under Egyptian control during that time frame. So there is absolutely no way for it to be possible that they were even a people group doing the things that the Bible is claiming during a time frame that they were under the Egyptian control. So they would have, so basically, as people say, they left Egypt to go to more Egypt. No, they didn't. They simply did not exist. The storyline didn't happen. In the 1400s, this people group did not exist. They haven't identified themselves as such at this time frame. They were just regular old Canaanites, like the other regular old Canaanites that was living in and around Jericho and these other Levantian cities. So, all right. Now, why do we identify some of these things? Well, archaeology has went and we have seen that the city of Jericho is one of the oldest cities, and it doesn't fit the oldest continuously inhabited cities, and that's going to play a part in this storyline as well. But it is one of the oldest established cities in the world that we know of. Jericho has been around since about 10,000, for about, well, we see elements that the city had been around in some form or fashion all the way back to estimated around 10,000 BCE. Now, as you go through the excavation of this city, you can see that the city of Jericho has expanded, contracted. You can see in different archaeological time frames where the wall that it had multiple layers of walls up, walls down. We can see that, and here's where we're going to just jump into it. We can see that in and around 1550 BCE, it is what do you call it? Seismologists And archaeologists have determined that these walls of Jericho fell around 1550 BCE, fell outward because of an earthquake, and the pottery that matches the wall time frame, the construction, the elemental time frame matches the 1550 time frame. Some try to speculate because the wooden beams are of a different time. It seems like the wooden beams were reestablished in around 1200, I mean around 1400. And then there's one guy rather, found a scarab, one scarab there that dates to about 1200. And he's trying to say that this scarab should then change the date and everything should match the scarab, but he's a Christian archaeologist. And so he's trying to take one item when there's multiple other forms of pottery and different wall excavations that demonstrate that the walls actually fell from an earthquake in around 1550 BCE. So, and then after that time frame, the city started losing its flavor. So it started to be abandoned because the walls were not rebuilt. And if you understand ancient cultures, when a city doesn't have walls around it, the city is considered easy to conquer. It's not safe. It's, you don't want to raise a family there because if you're ever attacked, it's easy to attack. It's harder to maintain laws because without having a wall. So walls are important to the people back then. Right? So from about 1550 until around 900 to 1000 BCE, there were no walls. So there would not have been any walls for Jericho to come and walk around, blow a trumpet, and the walls of Jericho will come a tumbling down. Right? So, so we can see that. We can understand that. But if you are a believer in this Bible, then you cannot. If you're a believer in this Bible, you are going to come up with different reasons and rationale as to why this story is absolutely true. But or you'll try to come up with arguments like I already see one where it's George Studemeyer's saying it's good to know that you were there. I don't know what George believes or anything of that nature. But the argument of it's good to know that you were there is the same argument that if you reverse that, they believe in Jesus. I don't know if George does, so, but the believer will say, "Oh, I believe in this. This actually happened." Yet they weren't there. Yet they want to say, "But you weren't there." See how that doesn't make any sense? But I just love when they come up with little dumb stuff. So we have that whole situation. So that means that the whole thing is relatively just a fairy tale, which the Exodus book is a fairy tale. The Pentateuch, I should say, the Torah, it is a fairy tale. It is just information. It is a people group who separated themselves from Canaanites in and around the 1200s, the mid to the early 1200s, who separated themselves from their primary Canaanite group, became more wandering sheep herders, and then had their ass whooped by Pharaoh Meneptah. After they took that ass whooping from Pharaoh Meneptah, they still survived. But because of the Bronze Age collapse that began around 1110 BCE, this enabled, and the Bronze Age collapse calls for Egypt to lose control of the Levant. And when Egypt lost control of the Levant, you had rivaling groups of people establishing themselves as cities or city-states. And to have a history of antiquity was one of the things that was very important for any people group in those eras, in those time frames. Even though we don't look at history as important to our establishment today, back then, that was very important. Right? This is why the Romans adopted so much Greek history, because they wanted to authenticate themselves, make themselves seem like they have been here for a long time. And so for the Israelites, it was, let me make us into a people group that has been here We've been here forever from the beginning. There's been some missteps where people have walked off this way, walked off that way, but we've been here since the beginning. Adam and Eve, first people, all the way through Seth. Seth comes up with Noah. Noah, boom, got Shem. Shem all the way to Abraham. Abraham through, Isaac, Jacob, and all the way up to Moses, Joshua, and then that's when and our kingdom now is based from Joshua, and then we had the inheritances, and bam, now we got our king. So we got a history, we have antiquity. And since these walls of Jericho have been known to have fallen down all of a sudden from an earthquake around 1550, then oh no, see, we walked around that joint 7 times, you know what I'm saying, blowing the trumpets. And then the next thing, then that last time we blew that trumpet on the 7th time, boom, the walls fell down. But oh, there's a piece of wall that looked like it's still up. So what had happened was when our spies went in, their hoe in there, she ran a whorehouse, and she told us, she helped us out. So we saved her piece of wall. Her piece of wall survived. That's why that one piece that still looked like it's standing, which could have been from any other time frame because they didn't have the archaeological, they didn't have the science that we have today. We don't know when it, but that's why that piece is standing up. That Rahab, I think of her name. What was her name? Was it Rahab? I believe it was. So that is why that piece of wall is still there. And this is how these stories were made up, they were created in this format. All right. Oh, Rahab wasn't. I don't think Rahab. That's probably why I thought Rahab, because I saw that Becca said something. So what we have is a made up story, but history, as always. One of the things that made me deconstruct from the Bible is when the more and more I researched actual history that we have, that we know, we see that the biblical stories are not true. And if the Exodus story, the Genesis story, cannot stand, right? If they cannot, it was Rahab, thanks. If they cannot stand up, then the rest of the Bible falls down, right? Jesus can't be a part of a fake Trinity if the God of this creation is not a real God. So Jesus then doesn't matter. Paul then doesn't matter. None of the patriarchs matter. None of the prophecies that they claim matter. None of it actually matters if this stuff didn't happen. At that point, it just becomes something a person is believing in because they're afraid, because of fear, because they've been indoctrinated into a religion. Beyond that, if you use your common sense and critical thinking, there's absolutely no way someone would still worship this deity, right? So it just doesn't work at all. And if anybody thinks that it does, you can either write it in the comments or you can bring yourself forward and come on to the show. Let me post the link on YouTube and Facebook. We are streaming on YouTube, Facebook over here, and then TikTok over there. Please know what the subject matter is about before you try to come up here. What did Kevin say? In the 1550 Chronicles, in the 1550 coincide with Moses the first and Amenhotep the first campaign into Levant and the Syrian-Palestine region. Yeah, this whole region was constantly being controlled by Israel. By Egypt, not by anyone else. It was not an Israelite area. Do you believe in God? Nope. No, no, no. Mm-mm. All right, so let me see if I'm so what I missed. Also, Rahab was not a prostitute. She was a brew wife within operating a hotel. People were mad because she was important in the story, so they called her name. Kind of like confusing Mary. Oh, thank you. Thank you for the live things and the rose thing, the gifts. Ghost gifts. Thank you. Appreciate that. When did Jesus come back? He ain't never come. Oh, what's today's date? Y'all know Jesus supposed to come back tomorrow. Old boy changed the thing. He's supposed to come back tomorrow. Between the 7th and the 8th, I think. Between the 7th and the 8th. Thanks for the rose. Thanks for the gifts. Thanks for the gifts. I appreciate it. Uh, I could have sworn that they said Rahab was she ran a prostitution house in that story. You sure about that? I could have swore. Let me check. Let me check while we're giving a little bit of time to see if. And I like to be correct. If I say something that is incorrect, please do not hesitate to correct. Um, Let me know. But according to this story, I thought for sure that Rahab ran a house of a fun house. I couldn't get this to you. Okay. All right. So Joshua 1. And Moses, Joshua, preparation for the invasion, passed to account the Reubenites and his place of livestock. Where is the Rahab woman? When did they go? When he send them spies in? Must be in Joshua 2. Go and view the land. There we go. Go view the land, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So they went and entered the house of a prostitute whose name was Rahab and spent the night there. And I'm reading the New Revised Standard updated edition, so I know it's not some King James trash. Yeah. I think the Bible writers, that is a good. I'm gonna have to do some research and thought process on it because if you think about it, how many stories in the Bible where a woman who does something helpful to these people is oftentimes already a prostitute or then engages in some level of prostitution, whether we're talking about Esther, which that is a level of prostitution when you want to become one night with the king so you can become one of his many wives. You're really selling your pum pum to this man in order to become one of his wives. You have Tamar dressing up as a prostitute in order to trick Judah. You got the Rahab. They say she's a prostitute. I got to do some research into how many times do they make the prostituting women utilizing prostitution or a prostitute something special, special use to these Israelites. I've never thought about the number of times that they keep doing that, and especially here in this Old Testament. So, yeah, just don't even get into that right now. Don't get into that right now. We're gonna get into that maybe tomorrow or the next day. Give you a little time to really like hone that in. But yeah, that's kind of funny that's interesting because I really want to jump into that. But so we know that if you think that this story, well, based on, I know some of you may not have heard everything that I had talked about. So just a quick run through really fast again. Basically, you have this story of Joshua going into there, going in, knocking down the walls of Jericho, had to have happened either in 1446 or in the 1500s. I mean, the 1200, mid to early 1200s. Problem is that from 1550 all the way down to 1100 or 10, well, down to 1000 or 900 BCE, the walls of Jericho didn't exist. Okay, that's one. The walls of Jericho didn't exist during the time frame that the Bible would have, that the Bible suggests that Joshua would have been there. So we have this. This is known by evidence of the walls that are there, and evidence of pottery that is there that dates to the relative time frame that it happened, that the walls were knocked down by an actual earthquake instead of somebody blowing some trumpets. But it would have happened either 300 years before Joshua or 100 years before Joshua. So it didn't happen. It just simply did not happen, right? And then, of course, we also know historically that this area of Jericho, up until around 1100 to 1000 BCE, was controlled by Egypt, was a vassal state of Egypt. There's no scholar disagrees with this unless you are just a biblical scholar that says I have to, because I have to believe everything in the Bible. But they were a vassal state of Egypt during that time. And if they had conquered Jericho, then Manasseh claims that they were a people group, a wandering nomadic people. This is not the indication of what the Bible says about them when they conquered Jericho. They inhabited that city. Yet Jericho was literally, vaguely, no, not vaguely, that's the wrong type of word, crazy. It wasn't overly inhabited, and certainly not by 600,000 people, so 600,000 men, estimated 2 million people total. It was not a city of any size during that time frame that Joshua should have been there, because when Manasseh came, he said the Israelites were just a nomadic group of people, and he whooped their asses. So if you believe this story happened, let me get a 1 in the comment. But if you know for sure, based on what has been delivered to you today, and I expect you to go research it, give me a 2 if Jericho, the walls, the Joshua story is false. So I know who I got on here. So Manaki believes this story, yet every shred of evidence that we have on this planet demonstrates that Jericho never happened, that the Joshua version of Jericho never happened. How can you explain the fact that there were no walls to come tumbling down if the walls fell in 1550 from an earthquake? Joshua could not have been there at any of that 1550. That could not have been Joshua. If you claim that it was Joshua, then that would go against your biblical story, even though the Bible has a contradiction in the timing itself. Right? You have 2 different time frames that your Bible is saying that this Jericho story would have happened. One would have been in and around 1446 BCE because of what is said in 2 Kings about Solomon. The other time frame would be a mid 1250, the early 1250, with the building of the cities of Pithom and Ramses, as according to your Exodus story. The 2 are in contradiction of one another. It doesn't work. And to further solidify your point, I hate saying it, Shashquin the first Baptiste Portal, 10th BCE, mentions no Israel or Judah. Yeah, I messed up the name that Kevin put on here on Tickety Top. I have to research that one because that's a new name for me. But which there's no mention here. You don't. The first time in any archaeology that you find out about an Israelite is in the Meneptah Stela. That's it. Those are the when he talks about a people group, wandering people group who worship Yahweh. That's it. The Israelite. If Joshua had did what he did in the 15th century BCE, then they would have been recognized as a nation of people by the time you get to Meneptah. Uh, they would have been mentioned in the Amarna letters because they would have been conquering a lot of the people that were under Egyptian control. They just simply were not. We got oh, I don't know if this person is still up. Malaku, I think that's how I say it. Malaku, is that how you say your name? Hello, sir, ma'am. Malaku, them, they, him, her, they, them. What the hell? Why press the button? Get on there. And here's the thing, I could hear him silently sitting there. What sense does it make? Even if you made a mistake and hit the button, my bad. I ain't mean to hit the button. Damn. This is crazy. This is crazy. This is crazy. When people do that. We got old Fred showing up on Facebook over here. And even though I'm going to talk about this on a separate video, I have to ask the question. Fred, let me see if you can answer. Fred Adams, let me be clear. I don't want Fred Jones to come at me because he don't want to be related to Fred. Fred Adams, why couldn't you just appreciate the Native American powwow and their culture when I did the live on Saturday? What is it within your Christian love hate that makes you have to hate on these people who was just demonstrating their heritage and maintaining their heritage? Is you have so much hate in your heart that just watching these Native Americans participate in their culture cause you to just crash out? You know, I'm posting a lot. So for those who don't know, I was live. We was at a powwow on the weekend on Saturday, and I tried to go live there. My signal was terrible on the grounds of where we were, so that's why it didn't last that long. But Fred Adams, first one to pop it on. This is evil. These were Native American peoples maintaining their culture, and yeah, so much hate, so much hate. Fred was just like going in. I rebuke you in the name of Yeshua. This is the demon devil working. Da 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 da. I'm like, dude, can't you just appreciate somebody's culture? Like the fact that we live in a society today where an event can be shared, right? You don't have to be present at everything. Like if I went to river dance, you're gonna be like, oh, I rebuke. Or is it just your hatred for me is so strong that no matter what I post, you have to you know what? That's what it is. I'm sorry. I just wasted y'all time on this whole thing because I just realized what it is by Fred. Because it is just the fact that anything I do, his hatred for me causes him to go negative about anything that I post. So I just realized that. So even when I posted things about my family on vacation, he was in hatred of it. Yeah, so my bad. I just wasted y'all time again. I answered my own question. I had to think about person, which I don't think about him that often. I just found it interesting. Yeah, Debbie, but he was just rebuking it. Yeah, he was like, "Oh, you're participating in the devil shit." So anyway, let's go back to Jericho. Let's go back to Jericho. Let's go back. So, my guy, Manaki, you say you believe in this story. Would you like to come up and explain why you still believe in this story? Although I, I think it's been presented very simply, in the most simplest form, information that demonstrates that there is absolutely no way that this story could be true. And I know that people like to, here's the brainwashing that happens within Christianity. You can demonstrate to a believer that there is no way this Jericho story happened. And they will say that, well, that's a minor thing. That's not an important thing. Right. And so, since it's not an important thing, the main thing is Jesus. He was born, he was God, he died, he was resurrected. That's the thing that actually matters. But your belief in Jesus stems on the fact of these stories in the Old Testament having to be true. Without the Joshua story, then you don't get the lineage that leads to Jesus. Without the lineage, Jesus can't be the Messiah. We can just see he's not that anyway, even how it was written. But without the lineage, he's not the Messiah. Without Moses, without the Genesis story, this Jesus don't matter now. He's just any other regular God created by man. So that is why these stories matter. This is why the Bible cannot have errors. This is why the Bible stories must add up with history. But when they don't, you then jump to I just believe because you're afraid of hell. So I really is really what is in the mind. What is going on in your mind? Is it the fact that your emotions are overriding your mind that makes you then say you will ignore the critical thinking? I will ignore my own ability to think through things, because if we was talking about something else, right? Let me see. I think Manicky is, yeah, Manicky is a black guy. If we was talking about, say, history of black people in whatever country he's in, then I would assume that he probably would stick to facts and things that we know and say that, well, this is a false narrative because what we know based on X, Y, and Z, this is what actually happened. But when it comes to their Bible, that level of thinking goes out the window. Right? It flies away. And because of that, it's like, okay, then what's wrong with you? What is the problem that's going on in your life and your mind? How much brainwashing have you had that makes you still just got to stick to this story no matter what? Right? It just doesn't matter. They have to believe. And uh, uh, it's a challenge to go from believing to not believing. Right? It's a challenge. You go through some stuff. You know, I probably shouldn't have talked about Fred today because all that did was give Fred exactly what he wants, which is attention. It just gives him attention. And that is all Fred wants. Fred has no life and he just wants attention. And this is where he gets some attention. And I'm sure that once this live is over, he goes over to somebody else's live to get attention. So it would be, I am advising my people on Facebook, just ignore him because he is just a Christian attention whore. And I mean to say it that way. He is a Christian attention whore. So let us all turn away from speaking about this person, talking to this person. He will make 5011 comments in there, which I appreciate those because they help the algorithm. So thank you for helping the algorithm. But we will will just ignore him. Riz said, I believe people want their I believe people want their bad and heaven at the same time. I do find that very interesting that people do. Christians are the most people who believe in the Bible. I find them to be the most immoral in what they would call morality and immorality on a daily basis. I find them to be the most hypocritical people as well. They stand up and try to present themselves to be this beacon of morality, and know that they are at least trying to follow the beacon of morality. Yet within their own mind and their private life and actions and words, they demonstrate the complete opposite of that oftentimes. And they go out and they rob, they kill, they murder, they steal. They sexing up everything, they drinking everything, eating everything. They do everything, they figure out a reason and a way for them to do whatever they want to do. And then when they can't figure out a biblical justification to do whatever they want to do, they run to the, oh, I just got to forgive God. Ask God for forgiveness. Even though their Bible says that I'm a jealous God, I forgive you for your transgressions. And then he flips that story later on, flips that narrative because this God constantly changes. But they also then run to, oh, well, even if I can't resolve it, then, you know, Paul had a thorn in his side and Jesus said that my grace is sufficient. So I may struggle with this my entire life. So I may struggle with cheating on my wife my whole life. That's the thorn in my side. That's the thorn in my side. And thank God Jesus died for my sins so that I can be forgiven every time I go cheat on my wife. You know, they literally create a way for them to act however they want to act, and yet still try to seem like they're pious because you know everybody missed the mark. Mm-hmm. And they still expect to go to heaven. They still think that they're going to go to this heaven because they'll say that they are a filthy rag. I'm sorry, but if I met a woman, I mean, I'm married right now. If before me and my wife got married, if I had met a woman and she was saying, oh, I'm a filthy rag, I'm not worthy of this or that, I'm not worthy of a husband and everything. But she said, but because Jesus died for my sins, or because the flying spaghetti monster on Saturday shaved the Parmesan cheese on me, I am that is what makes me worthy of being a wife. I would think they're crazy as hell. You have to be crazy as well. You have such low self-esteem that you believe that somebody outside of yourself must die for you in a human sacrifice in order for you to be worthy of life. I was worthy of life the moment the sperm penetrated the egg. I became worthy of life because I had life, because that's when my life began. And I've been worthy of it ever since. So you give me a person who thinks they need to hold on to this religion, then in order for them to be worthy of anything. And I've met the ones who they need that to feel worthy of anything that they have in their life and take no credit for anything they ever accomplished. Durden, I didn't see the whole name. What's your name, sir?
Durden Razor. You can call me Razor if you want.
Call you what?
Razor. You know, or you can just call me Durden.
Durden, okay. Yeah, because I can't. Are you over 21?
Yeah, I'm 33.
Okay, good. Are you a believer?
Yeah, I'm a believer.
And you're a believer in what? In the Bible? Let me be specific.
Yes, I believe in Jesus, therefore I believe in the Bible, yes.
Okay. So the prompt today is the fact that the Joshua and the walls of Jericho never happened.
Sure.
You say true?
No, I'm saying sure.
Okay. Oh, sorry. So what are your thoughts on that?
Have you Are you familiar with the name of Kathleen Kenyon?
Yeah,
You are?
I'm vaguely. I remember reading about her. She's an archaeologist. I think she was one of the first ones to establish that the walls fell down around 1550, I believe, if memory serves me. You still there? Hello? Dirty. Dirty. Hmm. I guess he must, if you maybe he lost his signal or something like that. But if you get your signal back, just come back up. No problem. Yeah, I think Kathleen Kenyon was a archaeologist in the 19th century, well, 20th century archaeologist. I think she was very instrumental in establishing. Okay, here we go. The 1550 time frame. Okay, you back?
Yeah. Sorry about that. My connection went sour. Anyway, so no, what I'm saying is that the archaeological record suggests that this did indeed happen, then how are we going to acknowledge that it didn't happen? Or how are we going to suggest that it didn't happen?
Okay, so Kathleen Kennedy, you brought her up. Kenyon. She brought it up that it happened in what year?
Well, the year doesn't. I mean, the year is irrelevant.
No, the year is very relevant.
We're talking about the event itself. The year that it happened is irrelevant. We're talking about the event of Jericho. Now, it could have been on a fault line. It could have been, just because of some natural order. We have no idea how it fell. The point of the matter is that's exactly what it is, because they agree that the walls of Jericho happened, regardless of who was there at some point in time. So if we're to look at this time and moment in history, that all archaeologists agree that the actual city was there and it actually fell, regardless of who was there because of that ordeal, again, we have to agree that the walls of Jericho were there. However, Dr. David Roll, Dr. Manfred Bitek agree that it happened to the middle to late kingdom after would be probably right around, I would say probably about 60, 65, maybe 70 years after the Exodus. So again, if the archaeological record suggests that the walls did come crumbling down and they have evidence of that, then how are we going to say that it didn't happen?
Okay, so I just found it just stunning to me that you're basing it on the simple fact that if an event happened, that means that it is fulfilling what the Bible is saying, but it doesn't matter the year or the time, because the year and the time is ultimately what does make the Bible story either true or false. Because
the Bible doesn't say that. The Bible does not give a time frame into which,
but it does. But yet it does.
But it doesn't.
Okay, so wait, hold on. What we're not going to do is you talk, and then as soon as I start talking, you interrupt and talk.
Sure.
Okay, we're not going to do that at all. So, and
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. That's the reason why I'm doing that. I don't mean to be interrupting. I just can't hear you.
How is it that you can't hear me, but you know when to respond to something I say? That doesn't sound true.
Because there's a delay. I don't know when you're going to stop talking and start talking. Is my point.
Okay. So you can hear me. There's just a delay. Gotcha.
Yes.
All right. So, and admittedly, I have pregnant pauses in my speech pattern. So a pause for me does not mean that I'm done. Right. I will point at you when I'm done. Okay. That works?
Sure. That works. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. So indicating that by saying that the Bible story, the Bible narrative doesn't give a time frame is absolutely not exactly what the Bible says. You can narrow down two different time frames that the Joshua story coulda, shoulda, woulda happened. The first way is based on 2 Kings, when Solomon says about 8 years into his reign that 480 years prior was the Exodus, which is what most Bible scholars or apologists, because I don't really call them scholars anymore, most Bible apologists view the date to be in and around 1446, which will be the time frame of the Exodus. So you're figuring then the Joshua story would be around 1406, since they would have spent the 40 years walking around the desert. Now, the Bible also in Exodus, so that's one indication of time frame. And if it is 1406 and around that time frame, that means that when it walls came down because of an earthquake in 1550, we have over 100 years of a time difference. So the Bible narrative can't be true. Second to that, which caused a conflict in the dating, is the fact that the Exodus story claimed that they built the Israelites built the cities of Pithom and Ramses. Those cities weren't built until around 1250 to 1200 BCE. So that puts another 200-year time frame and a 3 to 400 year time frame from when the walls fell down. So it does matter, and we can date it. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Dr. David Roll, which is also an Egyptologist as well as an Old Testament scholar, he said he has created a new chronology because the reason why that is because of the whole Ramses theory. And what he suggests is there is two Egyptian pharaohs by the name of Shoshank and Shishak. Okay, so what the interpretation of that is, because right around the late 1800s, early 1900s, we really couldn't understand the hieroglyphs. So because they are similar in interpretation. So what he suggests, he went back and looked at the record, and they are two different individuals, even though we almost have almost 100, almost right at about between 80 to 100 years worth of information, thinking it's the same person. He goes back and looks at him, and he goes back and looks at it, and sure enough, they're two different pharaohs. So what it's doing is, like, for example, whatever your real name is, how that is taking place is your legacy is going to live on. So what they're basically doing is they're going back, even though the cities of Memphis was already built, they're going to go back and contribute to this specific area. For example, Ramses. We know that Ramses, that the dates between Ramses III and the time of Shoshank or Shishak is completely different. I mean, almost right at 300 to right at 500 years. So what he did was he went back, and you can read this into his latest book. What's not latest book? You can read this in his book because he creates a whole new chronology because of that blunder. You can read it. It's called Exodus, Myth, or History. He corrects that whole chronology. So to this idea, which he also corrects, Kathleen Kenyon.
You're using the term correct. Has there been peer review on his information? Have you read any peer review on it? Because just because someone has an opinion of it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a correction. And you haven't really established the contradiction yet. All I'm hearing really is word salad.
I haven't created what? I'm sorry?
You haven't created a point. You haven't demonstrated.
Well, the demonstration is the fact that if the archaeological record, I've already made the position of, if the archaeological record says that this event happened, then the archaeological record is correct.
No, but when did it happen? When did it happen?
When did it happen? Again, I've already addressed this as well. According to the chronology of Dr. David Roll, as well as Dr. Manfred Bitek, it would happen to the middle to the late dynasty in regards of Shoshank. Right. So the problem there.
And when is that? When is that?
I'm sorry?
When is that?
Right around 1300 BCE to right at going into 1400 BCE. That's right around where the chronology is. According, again, not saying that this is, the gospel. According to Dr. David Roll and according to Dr. Manfred Bitek, their chronology indicates it's going to be in between the middle to the late 1300s all the way into the beginning of the 1400 BCE.
And so how are they correcting Kathleen Kenyon?
Because what they did was because of the Shoshank Shishak blunder, because again, at the time of when Jericho was excavated, there was only one pharaoh that they thought they were the same person. Well, when years later, when he goes and does a whole other background check, come to find out it's two different individuals who lived in between 300 to 500. I'm sorry, I take that back. Yeah, I'm sorry, 350 to 500 years apart from one another. And then you have Ramses. And so the point of the matter is, that's how he corrects Kathleen Kenyon, is because at the time, the assumption was that Shishak and Shoshank were the same individual. So again, when he goes back and does the research on it, and come to find out they're two different cats. So what we have been predicated upon again for throughout this entire, ever since we could read hieroglyphs, is predicated upon that blunder, and still people use that blunder today. That's how they discredit Jericho.
Okay, I haven't read the author that you're speaking of, and sure. So I cannot necessarily speak on that aspect of it. I cannot say that he's correcting anything and that there's a blunder that is present there, because that could just be your opinion of what it is, just as well as it could be his opinion of what it is, because you're not really, in your explanation, you're just saying he's claiming that these two pharaohs are one and the same. That's just a claim that I'm hearing. What is the proof of that?
Well, no, it's not a claim. That's what the archaeological record, and I don't mean to interrupt you, so I apologize. What I'm saying is the claim is not made by me. The claim is made by the archaeological record that they are one and the same person. What Dr. David Roll and Dr. Matt Verbetek is producing is they are two different individuals. You can watch his little mini series that he's got on YouTube as a better descriptor, and I'm not trying to point that is, again, the gospel. Because I think reading it and looking at it, him laying it out in a presented form is better. But if you want a synopsis, go to YouTube, type in Dr. David Roll, Myth or History, or Exodus, Myth or History. He lays it out before you, and he explains where that blunder come from, because it was created, as a matter of fact, it was created before even Kathleen Kenyon came on the scene, so it was already set in stone. And he goes into a better explanation, better than I can, because again, he studies the craft, so I don't study it, but I'm only repeating what I read. I'm only repeating the information that is available, because we were believing that the Joshua story is completely made up because of the archaeological record that was created way before Kathleen Kenyon ever come about. That's my point. That is what I'm suggesting. So it's not my claim, because it's not. I'm not claiming anything. The only thing I'm doing is demonstrating that there was a blunder that was taken into effect, and he goes and corrects it. That's what I'm suggesting.
Okay, and that is also what you are just accepting, because while you were talking, and I can listen, and I can multitask, and what I'm seeing based on this Dr. David Roll is that his information has not been accepted by most biblical scholars and Egyptologists.
Well, again, the reason why it's not widely accepted is because of one thing, because it's still predicated upon the fact of that blunder between Shoshank and Shoshank.
I asked you if you had. I asked you if you had read through, then read the. Shit, made me forget the word. If you had read the peer review of his work, and you said that you have, but
no, what I'm saying is
you said that you had.
No. What I'm saying is peer review. You only need 2 or 3 other people that agree with you to make a peer reviewed, inquiry. You don't need the whole entire academic community.
Well, peer review doesn't always.
Academia doesn't necessarily agree with other academics. That's the problem. Well, so that doesn't take away from his extensive research.
Well, see, the beauty of peer review is that people write shit. People write things, and what they write is not always the truth. People don't is a sway to the information accepted by, then depending upon who's doing the peer reviewing, you're going to have biases based on that. So you have to identify those people as well. But from what I can see, that he was credited with highlighting some weaknesses within the conventional chronology, but his
Conventional chronology.
his redating was completely rejected by the overwhelming number of Egyptologists, biblical scholars, and archaeologists. So
again, I've already addressed that.
now you really didn't address it. You just said a couple of people, and you saying that people are still going by some blunder, and you only consider it a blunder because you accept what this gentleman has put together. But
okay, so are we? If we follow the populace, am I allowed to do that?
If we
because the populace suggests that, for example, if we look at the New Testament, the overwhelming evidence in regards to what people say, scholars, etc., they agree that Jesus would never have existed because there's no archaeological evidence, there's no physical evidence. Can we agree to that? Yes or no?
The majority say that no. The majority of academia says that a historical Jesus existed.
No, we're not talking about the historical Jesus. We're talking about Jesus' story altogether. We're not talking about historical.
If you let me, dude, stop interrupting me. What I was saying is that the overwhelming majority of academia agree that a historical Jesus existed. But what they do not agree is that the biblical version of Jesus never existed. Now,
okay, so define. Go ahead.
Now I'm saying now you can go ahead and say what you overtalked me to saying after I completed my statement.
Okay, so the problem with the historical Jesus is the birth narrative, the conception narrative. Okay, so they want to look at the historicity of it, but what they fail to do is to mention the miraculous conception. That's what the blunder is. Okay, so they agree that a man named Jesus.
It is not a blunder to desire to have facts. Like you have an overuse of that word in order to try to move your point into the emotional stance that they made a mistake. It is not a blunder that people say,
well, that's what I'm saying.
We need to see some water walking, some dude who's feeding 5,000 people. We need evidence of that.
Well, that really deals with the metaphysics of things. We're not talking about metaphysics. We're talking about the historicity of who Jesus was. Now, the miraculous conception also delves into metaphysics as well, is because it's unnatural. The only thing that I can conclude in regardless to the miraculous conception is basically Mary was basically a hermaphrodite who was born with both both organs to be able to reproduce a child.
And oh shoot, hold on. Sorry, my phone started ringing, so it cut you off on the sound. Start over with Mary.
Okay, so yeah, if the only logical conclusion in regards to Mary is Mary was asexual, right? Where she is born with both male and female reproductive organs. The only way that a child can be conceived, because we've seen various species actually procreate without needing a partner to be able to do so. So the only logical conclusion is that she is an asexual candidate for that. Now,
except that parthenogenesis is impossible in mammals. So no.
Well, not necessarily.
It's impossible in mammals. There's not one case that happened.
Yeah, I think that if I'm not mistaken, there is a rat that has been able to do so. I don't remember which rat. Give me a second.
Let me correct and not say mammals. So to save you the time, in humans, parthenogenesis cannot happen in humans. It's impossible. So even people who are born hermaphrodites cannot reproduce within themselves.
Well, again, this is because we've never had it happen before. So it's not impossible to actually, it's not an archaic idea to think that this is not a possibility.
Scientifically,
because we've never had that experience before. I've never met, I'm sorry?
Scientifically, it's impossible. Like the science of it all, it says it's impossible.
Not necessarily, because as long as the woman has the womb and she has the cervix and she has the uterus, anything is possible. So again, I don't know. We don't have her bone structure. We don't have her gravesite to where we can actually go in or sarcophagus where we can actually go and exhume her and be able to study her bone and her makeup. And I think that does this justice. If we could find her bones or even Joseph's bones, I think that would explain a lot. However, I'm not taking out the possibility that this could happen. Now, if we're looking at the historical Jesus, that means we have to also accept the metaphysics of what he did. Now, again, certain portions of it. Now, I'm not saying cherry pick, but what I'm saying is the majority of scholarly interpretation believes that a historical Jesus does exist, but they remove all the miraculous, everything metaphysics has to do with Jesus completely away. But the problem there is, and that is a unanimous agreement. However, the physicalities there is going to be predicated upon, for example, his birth. Okay, so what can be demonstrated as solidified evidence that academia still rejects, and that is going to be the alignment of the stars and everything else. Because now we have a program that can actually go back in time to actually solidify Luke 3, I think is right around his birth, but also Matthew's agreement as well. So the point is we have this, but again, academia rejects it because it's not widely accepted.
Because it's not widely accepted. One, because there are two varied of a time frame between the birth story of Luke and the birth story of Matthew. So let me clear up a couple of things first, because
what do you mean? What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
So, to clarify one thing, if Mary was born a hermaphrodite, it is impossible for a hermaphrodite to impregnate themselves, because hermaphrodites, usually one aspect of the sexual reproductions are non-functional, and the anatomy of the person is not capable of producing a baby. So that whole thing about parthenogenesis, her being a hermaphrodite, is a non-starter. The Jesus narrative, when you look at the Matthew version of the story and you look at the Luke version of the story, there is at minimum a 10-year gap between the birth in Luke and the birth in Mark, because the birth in Mark says that he was born during the reign of Herod. And that because he was born during the reign of Herod, that would have put him born no later than 4 BCE. Truly, he had to have been born 5, 6, 7 BCE, but could be even earlier.
Not exactly. Are you talking about Matthew? Because Mark doesn't record Jesus' birth.
I said Matthew.
You said Mark.
Okay.
You said Mark.
Okay.
Okay, so
I meant Matthew. I meant Matthew. Now, stop talking.
Okay.
In Matthew.
So
Matthew.
Okay, so Matthew only gives the genealogy. Matthew only gives the genealogy that tells the location and gives, quote unquote, the prophecy of where Jesus was born. It doesn't say anything about a celestial event taking place. Luke's gospel is the only one talking about a celestial event, actually a convergence of an alignment of a configuration of whether it be a star, whether it be a comet, a meteor, or whether it be a planet. Luke's gospel is the only one that presents that detailed information.
Okay, stop. Damn. Okay, I need you to learn how to actually have a conversation with people, because you like to just cut people off and then jump into your whole little soliloquy, and it's starting to get on my nerves. All right. The fact of the matter is that I wasn't finished talking again before you started interrupting and going into your long ass diatribe. All right. I hadn't gotten to the finishing of my point in order for you to understand what I mean by them being born on a 2 different dates. So an astrological event would not have even mattered. And there's an additional contradiction within Luke in itself that demonstrates that Luke contradicts himself as well. So Matthew puts Jesus' birth during let's say it simply. Matthew puts his birth during the time frame of Herod the Great, which is 10 years prior at minimum, maybe more, to the time frame that Luke puts the birth of this Jesus character, which would be during 6 CE, during the census that was conducted by Quirinius, the governor of Syria, after Herod Archelaus was disposed of. So that puts it at least a 10-year difference. Now, Luke also makes the mistake of saying that Jesus was born is calculated about 6 months after the time frame of John the Baptist being born, which he puts that John the Baptist was born during the time frame of Herod. So it's the astrological doesn't matter unless you're saying Matthew is dead ass wrong. And if Matthew, then that creates a contradiction in your Bible. And if it's supposed to be the perfect word of God, it's not. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, most scholars agree that Jesus was actually born around 4 BC. And the reason why that is because of because of Herod's reign, because he sends out a decree to unalive him 2 years or younger. Now, that's a very key piece within inside what Scripture suggests.
No, but that's most scholars don't agree with that at all. And put it at that
that's
time.
The scholarly consensus. Yes, it is.
Well, then Luke is lying.
Why would Luke be lying?
Because Luke said that he was born during the time frame of the census done by Governor Quirinius of Syria, and that didn't happen until 6 CE.
It wasn't the governor; it was the emperor.
Okay. Did the emperor come and conduct it, or did the governor?
No,
he sent the governor of Syria to conduct the census. Like I said, I didn't say it was his census. I said he came to do the census. Splitting hairs.
Right. Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is, according to Luke's gospel, right? Luke's gospel presents, if I'm not mistaken, I'll have to go back and look at it, but I'm pretty sure that the census is only recorded in Matthew. It's not recorded in Luke. Now, again, I could be wrong.
You are definitely
wrong.
What
I'm suggesting is
you're 100% wrong.
No, if I'm wrong, then I'll own up to that.
Luke chapter 2, verse 1. In those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration and was taken by Quirinius, was governor of Syria.
No. It says Caesar Augustus that all the world would be taxed. That's not a decree. That's not a census.
Dude,
that's only to be taxed.
Oh my!
It clearly says it in Luke 2:1. It says, "In the days come to pass, in those days, that there will be a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed." That's not a decree of a census. They're talking about an implication of a tax. Matthew's gospel.
Stop, dude. Stop reading stop reading just a little part. This was the first registration and was taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. All went to their own towns to be registered. Joseph also went from the town of Nazareth to Galilee to Judea, to the city of David called Bethlehem, where he descended from the house of the family of David. He went to be registered with Mary, to whom he was engaged and who was expecting a child. No one of course, the purpose of there are multiple purposes of a census, but one of the main reasons of a census is to figure out what is the taxation of one of their vassal states or tributaries to their tributes to Rome. So no one says it's just a tax. It's not a census. You got to count the people and their property. That's called a census in order to tax them properly. And Matthew doesn't say anything about a census being done. It's in Luke. And this happens in 6 BCE.
Well,
6 CE. Sorry, 6 CE.
Where's the evidence that you're making that it was in 6 CE?
Because
we don't even have that record. In any of the archaeological records, we don't have that record. So how do we know it's going to be 6 CE?
Okay. One, we do have the archaeological record that shows that that's when Quirinius was governor of Syria.
But no, you're missing what I'm saying. When was he elected? When did his administration start? On top of that, when did he set out the census? Just because we have a man 6 CE,
and that
doesn't prove anything. We
do have the records of Caesar Augustus sending out this decree in 6 BCE, 6 CE. Those records are valid, dude.
Okay, so where's this record? Because I mean, I've never read anything in regards to anything online to suggest that this decree that was sent out by this specific person. The only thing that I've discovered was going to be the ring of Pontius Pilate that was found in Bethlehem, a signet ring, as a matter of fact.
Hold on, let me find something. Let me change this question. It's interesting that you will say, "Oh, I need evidence that this was in 6 CE, but then you don't need evidence of a miracle birth. You don't need evidence of walking on water. You don't need evidence of none of those things. But let me see the evidence of that, right?"
Well, no, I mean, again, I've already positioned myself in regards to if you want to talk about metaphysics, we can. I personally believe to answer the response to Jesus walking on water, who's to say that he wasn't walking on a sandbar? We don't know that.
That is the only thing I would say that he was walking on in order for that to happen.
I'm sorry?
So like one of the hold on, no, let's stop moving. Let's not move to something else. One of the examples of this, of what is determined to be evidence of this census going out, is the fact that Josephus is one of the historians who talked about this census of it happening.
Do you believe Josephus though?
Most of his work has been proven to be accurate. Most of his work has proven to be accurate, and we can tell where people have added to his work.
Most people reject it. That's the reason why I'm asking. Most people reject Josephus. That's the reason why I'm asking.
You use these generalized terms that are so incorrect, because most people do not. Actually, most biblical people love Josephus because they want to accept the Testimonium Flavianus, but actually scholarship recognizes that the Testimonium Flavianus is an interpolation, so it is not accepted. But his most of his information about the War of the Jews and what the happenings of Titus and Vespasian and all that sort of thing is very widely accepted. The different priest named Yeshua is widely accepted. Y'all love to accept him, Yeshua, his account of one of the Yeshuas being the brother of James. So yeah, no, he's very well accepted within history and within scholarship.
No, I was asking you if you accept it, because most people on TikTok that are deconstruction, they're atheists, etc., they reject Josephus, saying that it was they've inserted it at a later time. According to Dr. T.C. Schmidt, in his new book, he breaks it down, and clearly it demonstrates that that Josephus does write about Jesus, and it agrees with, I guess, I hate saying modern academia. That's the reason why I'm asking if you personally believe that the writings of Josephus.
Okay, as I said, the overwhelming majority of the writings of Josephus are acceptable. The Testimonium Flavianus is not acceptable, simply because we know that because of the writing style and the change in the writing, to be clear, the change in the writing style of the Testimonium Flavianus and its placement demonstrates that it was something that was later added, that it wasn't an original writing of Josephus. Plus, the fact that none of the early church fathers prior to 300 BCE who quoted Josephus seem not to quote that aspect of Josephus, which would have been crazy for them not to. So I accept most of his work except for the part that people added to his work. You understand?
Yeah, I completely.
Okay. But based on people keep calling me. Based on multiple people, but based on multiple information, uh, having the installment orders of Quirinius being installed as governor. And he became governor of Syria in 6 CE. So to answer that question, that's when he became governor of Syria, which is the same year that the Augustus sent out this decree for the taxation, and it was sent out because Herod Archelaus was no longer going to be running Judea at that time frame. And Judea then became a province. And also we know that at that time frame, that's when Judea became a province of Rome instead of just being a vassal state of Rome.
Well, the problem that I'm having there is the time frame between, even as a believer, what I'm having a struggle with is as how we can go about dates, knowing that dates can be manipulated to fit a specific narrative. For example, the general consensus of the scholarly academia agrees that Jesus was born right around 4 CE. Okay.
Then Luke is lying. Then Luke and Rome is lying. Then Luke and Rome are lying. Then
one knows because they don't give a time frame. Now,
yes, they. Oh my God, dude.
No, what I'm saying is they're giving a time frame through an interpretation by the way of the reader. That doesn't mean that this really took place. For example, the Starry Night program. For example, the Starry Night program. If we're going to look at Luke's gospel, okay, if we're going to look at Luke's gospel in the time of Jesus, there's again that celestial event that's taking place. If we look in the Starry Night program, which is an astronomy program, right, which you can actually go back in history and look at all the convergence of any star, of any planet, of anything. There's nothing taking place anytime in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, even up into the 6th BC, right? There's nothing taking place in celestial events. Now, if you look further back, right around 1, 2 BC, it explodes with a celestial event because that is who the wise men, that's what they follow. That is the signification of what is taking place in regards to the birth of the Messiah, because they came from the east, right? Which is going to be modern day, what we call modern day Babylon or Iraq, or the southern east end of Iraq, should I say. That is right around where David was teaching them, but that's for another topic. Daniel. But the point is they follow this event. They follow this celestial occurrence or celestial anomaly, and they follow it into Jerusalem, right? And so we don't know what that celestial event is. According to the Starry Night program, you can Google it. It's about in between $600 to $800. You can buy the program, and you can look at it for yourself. 1 BC, 2 BC, the sky lights up like a Christmas tree. 3 BC, 4 BC, 5 BC, and 6 BC, you have squat. So if if Luke got it wrong, then the wise men did come from the east. Then we might as well go ahead and chalk the entire story and completely do away with Luke's gospel altogether. But because it's contingent, upon that celestial event, we have evidence to suggest that what they're saying is true.
Hold on. You are mixing up your gospels, okay? It is the Matthew gospel that has the wise men following the star in the east, right?
Luke's gospel does too.
No. Luke's gospel does not have wise men following the star in the east. Luke's gospel has a star appearing, and the shepherds in the fields, an angel appearing to them, and then that angel saying, "This star will be a sign for you." Well, they just say that. No, it just have the angels appearing to them in the fields.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is, if we're going to look at the correlation is to putting both gospels together, Luke's version and Matthew's version. What I'm suggesting is I'm combining the both. Just because Luke's gospel does not mention the Magi does not mean that the wise men are not incorporated, because that is describing the events of what took place.
Okay.
Because Matthew's gospel does not suggest that there's any celestial event taking place.
Yes, it does.
Until Luke's gospel.
Yes,
Matthew's gospel does.
Yes, dude. The whole Matthew's
gospel does not talk anything about a celestial event.
The whole
only recorded in Luke.
My God, I really need you to maybe write this shit down.
Give me the chapter and verse. If there's anything in Matthew, give me the chapter and verse.
Okay. Matthew chapter 2. Verse 1. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child whom has been born King of the Jews? For we observed the star in the east and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened in Jerusalem, and so that's the whole Magi. So we got the Magi. Is that enough?
That's the wise man. That's the wise man.
Yeah.
That's what I said.
Matthew 2. Matthew chapter 2, verse 1. Star in the east.
Okay.
You said Matthew didn't have any astrological events.
No. What I'm
no, okay. That's what you said.
Let me clarify. Let me clarify what I said. You have more of an explanation in Luke's gospel of a celestial convergence than you do in the Matthew's gospel.
What's the celestial?
You said you don't have that in Matthew 2. You're the one.
That is not, dude. Okay, everybody on these lives, we're on 3 platforms. Did Durden say that the astrological events was in Matthew? Put a 1 in the comment, because I didn't say that it was in Luke. I said there was none in Luke.
There's none in Luke?
Yes, there's no astrological event in Luke. Luke only has some angels coming down and talking to some shepherds. That's it. There's no astrological events in Luke. All the astrological events that you're speaking of is in Matthew, which you should know that because you're trying to put his birth in 4 BCE. 4 BCE is the Matthew version, because that's during the time frame of Herod. That would be Herod's time frame. Luke is putting it after Herod Archelaus is disposed of, which creates a whole nother conflict, because in Matthew, Jesus now returns while Herod Archelaus is still regent over Judea, and decides to go to Galilee because Herod Archelaus is running things. But Luke puts it after Herod Archelaus, his birth after Herod Archelaus has been disposed of. Plenty.
That I may have misspoke. I was referring to Luke when I was referring to Matthew when I should have been talking. I'm sorry, I was referring to Luke, but I should have been talking about Matthew. All right. So if I misspoke, I apologize. Recant what I said. What I'm suggesting is what we're ignoring is the fact that the celestial event is inevitably taking place, regardless if it's in Matthew, regardless if it's in Luke. That is what it's predicated upon, a celestial event. Because what is being ignored is the time frame. Because again, one version or another doesn't matter which version it is, whether it's the Gospel of Matthew, regardless it's the book of Luke. They suggest the time and season in which something is going to take place. Now, December 25th, completely do away with that because that's winter. You're not going to have a flock. You're not going to have flock outside grazing on a hill. This doesn't work.
We're not talking about that.
Especially in Jerusalem.
We're not talking about that. You like to go into a whole bunch of other stuff. But the point is,
it's literally the same topic. It's literally I'm on the same subject.
Yeah, but that part don't matter because literally,
it actually does matter.
Literally, Luke is placing the birth way after, even if this was based on these celestial events. Luke places the birth of Jesus way after these celestial events happen, which would make Luke's story false. Luke is not, what's the word? Luke is not, you can't make the stories match. They don't match at all.
Well, the stories aren't supposed to match at all because it's two different times.
But that's my point. Luke is saying that he is being born.
Matthew's recording it again, doesn't matter what the time of day is. He's recording it because Luke is not even a gospel of Jesus. I mean, he's not a direct descendant of the disciples. He is only a disciple of Paul. But the point of the matter is he's writing it in a later time period. I would agree with that.
So he's wrong.
As far as the events,
so he's wrong.
How is he wrong? How is he wrong?
Because the events, he's saying Jesus was born during the census, after Herod Archelaus has been disposed of, which puts it at around 6 CE.
But the point of the matter is, again, if Luke's gospel is completely wrong, then we have a major conundrum inside the gospels at all.
You do.
And which, I mean, again, the time frame is really irrelevant, to be honest with you.
No, it's not. You know what? You keep saying that, and I don't know why you want to say that. To say that it is irrelevant it's not irrelevant. It is very relevant when this book, this compilation of books, is supposed to be the inerrant word of this God. But if the book is wrong, if one of the aspects is wrong, if they're in contradiction of one, then that throws the whole thing off. Because what are you to believe?
Well, again, the Bible does not say specific dates. It's only an interpretation by the reader who is inserting a date. That's the reason why the Bible does not give specific dates throughout the entire course of it. Because apparently, according to some,
we're not going to keep going around. Well, we're going around in circles.
I'm sorry that you're having a hard.
I'm not having. I'm not having. Don't try to loud talk me on my show. I am not having a hard time. Do not try to determine how I'm feeling or thinking or whatever. I'm not having a hard time with the information. My difficulty is the fact that every time I demonstrate that your statements are wrong, then you want to make that thing that you were harping on become irrelevant. Because if the story that Luke is telling is opposing to the story that Mark tells, it is very relevant. Because then that is going into the, well, it's just as long as it happened kind of thing. And if you want to do the long as it happened kind of thing, that's fine. That's not what my show is about. That's not what I talk about. I talk about hard facts. All right. I don't care about your metaphysicals and all that. I talk about hard facts. And the hard fact is simple. Matthew puts him during the time frame of Herod, which has to be between 4 and 6 BCE. Luke puts it at 6 CE. So the two stories are contradicting one another. It's really just that simple.
I wouldn't say contradictory. I'd say more of a paradox. And the reason why that is because, again, if you want to position yourself on that hill, fine, you do whatever you got to do. But don't say that I'm wrong when, in fact, you haven't demonstrated that I'm wrong.
I have demonstrated.
Hold on. The reason why that is because of one key factor. The Roman calendar within itself only presented 9 months of the year. The other 3 months are not accounted for. That's the reason why we can't look at a time frame.
What the? Stop. Because you are just straight up lying through your teeth to say that the Roman calendar at that time frame only presented not. Julie. Oh my gosh.
Look it up if you don't believe it.
Julius Caesar. I don't have to look it up. I already know this. Julius Caesar.
No, you don't. Google it because
oh my gosh.
When you discover that, my guy, you're going to be like, oh crap, he's right.
When did Julius? What is the Julian calendar?
The Julian calendar. See, the Gregorian calendar is what we go by now. The Julian calendar, I think, is probably.
Stop trying to obfuscate. When was the Julian calendar established?
Oh, that time I have no idea. But
who established? Who established it?
Julius Caesar. I'm not sorry,
yeah, you're right. Julius Caesar.
Julius Caesar. Yeah.
And Julius Caesar is before the Jesus narrative, right?
No, Jesus is before Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar lived right around Mark Antony's time because Mark Antony was a part of his assassination.
You do realize that Augustus Caesar, who was the emperor during the time frame of the birth of Jesus, is like the nephew or something like that of Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar is before Jesus?
I haven't looked into that. I mean, I would be honest, I haven't looked into who's related to who.
Okay,
I've never heard that.
The relation doesn't matter.
So I can't confirm that or deny it. So I'm not going to position myself and make myself look like a fool when I've never heard that before. I didn't know that they were related.
Okay.
So again, the reason why that is because, again, what is inflated is the fact that
I guess we got to do this the hard way. Julius Caesar, right, was born in 100 BCE. He died in 44 BCE. You okay? So it was right there. I just Googled it just so that I can say I Googled it, even though I already knew it. So that puts Julius Caesar before the Jesus character, right?
Okay.
Julius Caesar established the Julian calendar. You agreed to that, right?
Sure.
The Julian calendar has 12 months. This is why our names of calendar dates, our names of calendar, like this is October, meaning 8, but it's the 10th month, is because Julius Caesar added the additional 3 months. So it wasn't a 9-month calendar. So your entire thought process on they had a 9-month calendar, and so the timing is off, is completely wrong.
No, actually, type in, while you're there, go in and type in the original Roman calendar established by Romulus. Had only 10 months, so I was only a month off, totaling 304 days, which is from March through December, which is called the Winter of Gap, which is Numera Populis, the second king later added January and February.
Dude,
it gets 12 months, which is 355 days. Again,
you are completely intellectually dishonest as hell.
How am I dishonest?
Because
a simple Google search will just prove you wrong.
What does
it says? Yes, the original Roman calendar established by Romulus had 10 months, totaling 304 days. It's a quick Google search, and it will tell you and prove you that you're wrong.
What does that have to do with the fact that at the time frame of the Jesus narrative, they would not have been using that for at least about 50 plus years, they have been using a 12-month calendar in Rome?
Because originally it was 10 months,
but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. At the time frame of these writings, at the time frame of Jesus, they have been using the 12-month calendar.
And now you're trying to crash out because you've been proven wrong.
No, I am not crashing out. I am laughing my ass off because you are intellectually dishonest because you're trying to talk about the Roman calendar that was established. Stop trying to overtalk me. Yeah, because here's the thing. Here's the thing. I'll mute the fuck out your microphone. Dude, can everybody hear this? Did everybody hear what this man just said? He first tried to say that they were using a 9-month calendar when referencing the time and dating of the Jesus character, and whether we're dating it at 4 BCE or dating it at 6 CE, but yet they weren't using a 9-month calendar because in 45 BCE, Julius Caesar introduced the Roman the Julian calendar into the Roman Empire in 45 BCE, which negates anything you're saying about Romulus having a 9-month calendar, because doesn't matter, and no one's crashing out about anything. I am simply finding it hysterical that you trying to make this shit work, but it doesn't work, and I'm done with you because I wanted to have an intellectual conversation with you, but you're incapable of doing that because every time I show that you're wrong, you just can't take it. See, you say that you can, and in a couple of instances you did when you said you misspoke about Matthew. I'll give you that. But then you talk about a calendar. Oh, they were on a 9-month calendar, so the year we can't pinpoint it. Bullshit. And he's still over there. He's talking about the Romulus. He was talking about Romulus. They have been using the Julian calendar for decades before Jesus was born. During the time frame of Herod, they were using the Julian calendar. During the time, so Matthew would have been using the Julian calendar. Luke would have been using the Julian calendar. The Gregorian is way down the street and doesn't even matter to this conversation. You just don't want to admit, and you're hinging. I understand what happened. We got the Starry Night thing, and that proves, but that's for Matthew. There's no astrological events that happen in the Luke story. I read it to you. There's no archaeological events. And then you got the problem of, and I don't even want to get into where did Jesus go after he was born. In Matthew, they go to Egypt. In Luke, they take their happy asses right on up to Jerusalem and then to Galilee. So, oh my gosh, this dude. And he's gonna try. And I love how they try to do things like say, "Oh, you're crashing out, you're crashing out." No, I'm laughing at the hysterical nature of your mindset. That cognitive dissonance really just be enveloping these people to a degree that is amazing to me. It is simply amazing. He is one of them people who got so much, he grabbed hold of all these different information and it's all jumbled up in his mind, but he thinks he knows what he's talking about. And all he's doing is quoting other people instead of the research he's done himself. Grizz.
How you doing, brother?
Pretty good. Are you over 21?
Yes, sir.
Cool. Are you a believer?
Yes, I'm Muslim.
You're Muslim?
Yes.
I see that you wrote he's crashed. He's crashed?
He crashed about using a calendar that wasn't in use at the time and trying to do the math with the 9 when the math was supposed to be done with the 12.
Yeah.
He got mad about it and said you crashing out in reverse psychology.
Yeah, that doesn't work for me. I was trying to be patient with him, even though he kept demonstrating that he would not accept the information that I was reading from his own Bible. But hey, it is what it is.
It's kind of common with Trinitarians.
Yeah.
I just want to say this real quick, and I'll be off. I'll be out your hand.
Yeah, you got something to do, but go ahead.
My baby's spoiled. Whenever she sees me on the phone, she starts screaming and asking for everything.
Well, you did it. You spoiled her.
But bro, I can't say 100% that I'm sure about this. Let me go on the balcony. I can't say 100% I'm correct about this, but in my personal belief and what I've been coming to find out in my researches, I believe the New Testament and Christianity as it is, not as a whole, and not even with all of them. I believe it's like white supremacy being written into a religion. I believe that because even the part about what black people used to be slaves that was there, it's not there anymore.
Wait.
The New Testament been changed so many times, but were prophets changing them, and then you have the Christianity being implemented into American government. It's like they killing. You know, I'm Muslim, so of course I feel heartfelt about it. But all of the stuff that's going down in Israel and Palestine, and they backing it with the Bible and all this stuff. They did that to us before.
Okay, because you can. The Bible can be used. So I disagree and agree with you, and let me explain. I disagree that the Bible was white supremacy was added to the Bible or was written into the Bible. Supremacy has always been a part of the Bible, and it is just that different groups have utilized the supremacy mentality of the Bible to their own version of supremacy. So as the Bible shows ethnic supremacy with Israelites, that was being utilized by European Christians to justify their mentality of supremacy, and so on and so forth. So it's just, and the Bible and the Bible backs the type of slavery that happened in America. It backs the type of slavery that happened anywhere in the world, as far as chattel slavery and indentured servitude. So this got support.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that part.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. She was relaxed until she seen I was on the phone.
That's understandable. Take care of the baby, man. Take care of the baby.
I just wanted to see that real quick. Let me go get to her. Thank you for having me.
All right, no problem. Thanks, Grace.
Thank you.
Sphinx, New York. Call the number. It's after the date, but the person that I talked to, he'll still allow you to grab the blocks if you call them. The link may not have worked because it was after the date and it closed out if you did it after the date. So just call the number and tell them that it's the Free Thinkers group. For those who don't know what the hell I'm talking about, we're having a meetup here in San Antonio, October 31st through November 2nd. Yeah, we didn't fill enough room, so I got to do some finagling to get some more people in here or to not have to pay for this shit. But call the number. Call the number to the hotel, the Jewelry Plaza, downtown San Antonio. Reference the Free Thinkers group and just call them. The link is not going to work now because the time frame has passed. So, and Grizz, don't be blaming that baby. You spoiled her. You did it. Just like I know I spoiled mine, but you spoiled her. Yeah, no, the website is not going to work. You got to call them now. It's past the date, Sphinx. It's past the date that was established. So you got to call them. So call that number. That's in the description. So if you still have the description on the YouTube videos, then yeah, just call that number. But I just found that so crazy. Like every point that he tried to make, he kept trying to make the time frame is irrelevant. The time frame is irrelevant. The time frame is incredibly relevant because if the time frames don't match, then the story is not true. You cannot say that the story of Jericho, that the one author who is not accepted by most Egyptologists and archaeologists is trying to change the time frame and change the story of Egypt. And they're like, nah, dude, you're wrong. Yes, they agree to some of the weaknesses that he pointed out, but you're wrong as far as the time frame of this city of Jericho, of who was Pharaoh, and so on and so forth. The fact of the matter is, Israelites have no existence in archaeology until 1204 with the Meneptah Stela. The walls of Jericho are said to have fallen in 550. The Bible is saying that the Exodus story happened around 1446 through, and if you look at the whole narrative of 40 years out in the wilderness, then 1446 to 1440. If Solomon is saying that the Exodus, well, he's saying that Exodus happened at that time frame, so that's 1446, and then you got 40 years of wandering through the wilderness. So you got 1446 to 1406. Well, the walls of Jericho are already down prior to Joshua ever going into the city of Jericho. So there would not have been any walls for them to walk around and sound some trumpets. And then the city was sparsely inhabited between most of that time frame because they had no walls, and the walls were never rebuilt until around 10,000 BCE to 900 BCE. So this whole story of Jericho then has to be called into question, which then calls into question the conquering of Ai. And if we get into the city of Ai, Ai was known as a desolated city that no one inhabited until after the Bronze Age collapse. So no one was even inhabiting the city of Ai for them to go and genocide the people of Ai. So the entire Joshua narrative of them taking these lands and conquering these lands become somewhat of a fairy tale story of people trying to create their history. And this history could have been created by Samuel. This history could have been created by Saul, or even David could have created this history of what happened. David is probably the most likely candidate, since the only evidence, there's no evidence of Samuel, there's no evidence of Saul. There is a slight evidence of a house of David, which does not necessarily make a house of David is not necessarily a kingdom, but a house of David could be a kingdom. It could be a warlord, or it could just be an important person in their group at that time frame. And that it talks about, I think the Tel Dan Stele talks about how the house of David, they warred against the house of David. And I don't know if I can't remember if they defeated them or what, but they warred against the house of David. And that's the closest thing that you have to any archaeological evidence that David might have existed. So it's most likely if David did exist, he was instrumental in creating this whole narrative. Solomon then learned this narrative and suggested when this happened. But what is said about Solomon and in his 8th year, that it was 480 years, the Exodus story happened. This is written by the author of 2 Kings, which is not being written at the time frame of Solomon. So we don't even know if Solomon knew of this story yet. The closest idea that we have that this story was written would have been during the time between Hezekiah and Josiah, which places the story being written or told between 800 BCE, around the late 800s BCE to the early 600s BCE. That's the only evidence of any of those things happen. And as far as, shoot, I hate that moved. Dang it. I hate when the prompt moves like that. Let me change the prompt. Shoot. Because it's like pulling teeth to grab it again. Luke puts it in 6 CE because he says that it's during the time frame of the governor Quirinius of Syria conducting a census that was given out by Augustus Caesar. We know that census, that Augustus Caesar had a census done in Judea in 6 CE when he got rid of Herod Archelaus. That's why we know it's 6 CE. And I love how the dude was saying that, oh, the Bible doesn't give a date. We can look at all the events surrounding it and then know the dates of the events surrounding it in order to determine when the thing happened. But you like how he liked to use the Starry Night thing to determine when Matthew is saying it and give it a date, but then wants to say, ignore or try to say that it could be false, it could be this, it could be that, as far as the Luke version. So let me make up an excuse for the Luke version because I want to accept the Matthew version. And then can't recognize that both of them, that they both now are in conflict with one another. Aren't you basing that off of Josephus? Not just Josephus. There are other indicators of like the fact that he wasn't established into the governorship until 6 CE. And most of Josephus' work is valid, has been validated, I should say. Except for that testimony of Flavianus. We know that that's not. And even if you look at some of the conflicting things, like Tertullian, who's writing in 155 to 220, suggests that Jesus' family was recorded in the census of Judea conducted by Centenius, Saturnus, who became governor from 9 to 7 BCE. He was suggesting that it happened during that time frame. But the problem with what Tertullian is saying is that that census wasn't done in Judea. Let me see. That was too many citations. There's way too many citations. Yeah, but that's a whole nother conversation. So, whew, I ain't gonna lie. Sometimes I wake up and I was like, I know I'm gonna get some circle debate. I don't even want to talk to people today. Don't the Bible got dead people writing about themselves? Yes, Moses writes about his own death and events that happened after his own death. Uh, so yeah, you got dead people writing about their own stuff. So we know that's what indicated that Moses didn't write the Pentateuch, or at least some parts of it he did not write. Right, low. So that is one of the other conflicts within. I was saying earlier. I don't know if you heard it, but I was saying one of the conflicts. So Lowe said Luke puts the timing during the reign of Herod when he talks about John being born. Right, exactly. He does, and that's problematic because he is saying that. And let me see if I can find exactly where he says that. So in Luke chapter 1, verse 5, Luke says that in the days of Herod of Judea, there was a priest named Zechariah who belonged to the priestly order of Abijah. His wife descended from the daughters of Aaron. Her name was Elizabeth. So Luke puts the birth of John the Baptist during the time frame of Herod, right? But it just said King Herod of Judea, right? That doesn't necessarily mean Herod the Great, but it can be accepted as Herod the Great. He needed to be more specific. And this is the time frame when Mary supposedly comes and visit Jesus. I mean, visits Elizabeth, and Jesus is supposedly born like 6 months after the birth of John, which would put it under this reign of Herod. So in one way you can say that if you assume that this king is Herod the Great, then you would say it would be a contradiction to the time frame that Quirinius came and did a census in Judea, right? If you say it was Herod the Great. But you can also look at the fact that the time frame of the birth of Jesus or the birth of John would have been during the time frame of Herod Archelaus. So King Herod could have been in chapter 1, Herod Archelaus or Herod the Great. It could be either one of those two, right? You really can't say one over the other because Luke doesn't give enough information to be able to determine which one it is. Now, if Luke is saying that it's Herod the Great, then that would conflict with the census. If Luke is saying that it's Herod Archelaus, then it wouldn't be in conflict with the census data, the census taken by Quirinius, because then it's happening relatively at the same time because the census was being done because Archelaus was being disposed of in 6 CE. That was the whole purpose of doing it, because now Judea was changing its status within the Roman government. Now, that would make sense with the Matthew story, because if Jesus was born during Herod, it is during the reign of Herod Archelaus that they come out of Egypt and then go to Galilee. But he can't be in Galilee, already been living in Egypt for a while, and then being born in Luke at the same time. So it still creates conflicts within the story, just different conflicts, but it's still a conflict. And Lo said, I think Luke is more credible than Matthew. See, one of the problems with it is that Matthew is writing, the author of Matthew, whoever the author of Matthew is, the author of Matthew is writing, trying to establish Jesus in the Messianic line according to the Jewish people. So this is why he got to have him come from Egypt and all this, persecution at birth and all this kind of stuff. While Luke is writing as a follower of Paul, who Paul never met the Jesus character. Paul wasn't an apostle. Luke was never an apostle. So he's writing this story decades upon decades after the Matthew version has already been put out. So he's supposedly this doctor historian that is writing this story. And he's getting all kinds of things wrong or that are in conflict with what should have been available to him at that time frame. Yeah, I was gonna say it'd have been better, Lo, if you just came on up here. What up, Lo?
Yo, what's up?
How you doing?
All right. I actually pushed by mistake, but
well, too bad you here.
But yeah, but the Christian response is that there was an earlier census. That's why in the Luke Gospel, when it says it says first. They say the first census. So I've looked at some things. I can't tell you exactly where it's at, but I looked at some things where there is a argument for that. So if there's an earlier census, then Luke and Matthew would not be at war with each other in that sense. They had war with each other in the other details, but it wouldn't be in the time sense.
Okay, but there's no earlier census that was conducted by Quirinius in Judea.
Well, I said the census was conducted by Augustus Caesar.
Well, Augustus Caesar gave out the decree for the census, right. But the census was actually done by Quirinius. It's not like Augustus. That'd be like saying, okay, it's the year of this. Let's say this was a census year. Is Trump gonna go around doing the census?
Right, I understand what
you're saying. Yeah. So the emperor is not doing that kind of work.
Yeah, but the argument is kind of like Quirinius was also at another time a ruler at an earlier time also.
No, he never was.
Whether that's true or not.
That's the problem. He wasn't. He was never a governor. He was a legatus. He went and fought battles, and he commanded legions, but he was never a governor until he got his appointment in Syria.
Right.
Now there's, like I was saying earlier, let me see if I can find it again. Where's that? I didn't want to spend at the time frame, I wasn't trying to go into that.
But that one guy, man, he was funny because he was saying it was Luke, and then he kept telling him, no, you're talking about Matthew, and then he went and said, no, you're wrong, and then he showed him he was wrong, and then he was still right,
That's how they gotta be. They still gotta be right. They still gotta be right even when they're wrong, so that they can, make it fit.
That's the worst part about debates when people cannot see the point. Like, you don't have to lose your whole entire argument just because you can see the point, and some people don't recognize that, so they don't keep, but they don't want to lose the argument. They can't see the obvious point.
Yeah. I'm just scanning something real quick here. So the claim that Tertullian makes of an earlier census by Gaius Saturninus is merely just a claim that Tertullian is making somewhere between 160 and 225 CE. There's nothing that would demonstrate that was actually happening.
Well, somebody, when I was looking at the what I call Christian response, they were actually looking at the stuff that Josephus actually wrote actually in Josephus' writings, there seems to be a conflict in what he's saying because you know, I can't say exactly what it was. I don't remember exactly, but this particular person who was making the argument, when I read it, it made sense. That's I'm just saying it made sense that we might be leaning too heavily on Josephus because the Christians they're gonna choose Josephus over Luke over Josephus anyway. But when I look at Luke himself, the writer, if Luke and the writer are actually the same person, he seems to be very meticulous about detail. So it's hard for me to think he just made up a census. That would be kind of difficult for me to really put on him. He don't seem to write that way. Matthew makes shit up. That's different. Matthew actually makes up shit. I think Luke actually, whoever wrote the book of Luke, actually searched that stuff out. You know what I'm saying? So I think, for him to mention another census, an earlier census, or maybe an earlier census, I would have to think either somebody told him that, or he just got a detail mixed up, or it actually happened.
Who are you saying wrote an earlier census? Who is you saying wrote about an earlier census, though?
I'm saying Luke. Well, like I said, the Christian responsibility that because you got the census that is at 6 CE, that there was an earlier census. That's why the word first is used when we talk about when they talk about the census in Luke. So there's another census. Yeah,
but that's the thing. The person who is claiming the earlier census is Tertullian, which he's writing.
Oh, it was somebody else. I was reading it. Somebody else kind of going into actually what Josephus said.
Josephus writes about the same census that Luke wrote about. They are both, Josephus and Luke are walking lockstep with each other.
Yeah, but his details in other places, with this person I was reading or that was going into it, he was showing that the details may show that Josephus actually mixed them up. So,
well, that person lied because Josephus says Quirinius conducted a census at 6.
Other details about what's the guy named Cyrenius? Other details about Cyrenius that this person was able to point out in Josephus' own writing that showed he may have mixed it up or something. So that's what I'm saying. There's another argument out there, and like I said, I can't give it to you clearly because I went through it, once or twice. So it's not something I got real strong. But I'm just saying that Luke does put he may have that detail wrong, but he does put the birth in the time of Herod. I know you're saying it might be the other Herod, but normally when they say Herod, they're talking about Herod the Great. When they just say Herod in the Bible.
Yeah, I need you to get some details on what you're talking about. And then what you say about Herod?
I didn't mean to push the button, but
so the Herod thing is Luke just said King Herod. He didn't specify whether it was Archelaus or if it was the one that we know as Herod the Great. So you can kind of go either way with that one because he's not clear. But if you take into context the fact that when he's saying this census is done, then it would suggest that the Herod he's talking about is Herod Archelaus in Luke chapter 1.
Well, another reason why I would reject that is just because in the rest of Luke's writing, he also writes that Jesus being around the age 30 is when he started his ministry. And so if the census was 6 CE, that would push his crucifixion all the way to 36 CE, which nobody does.
Well, it'll push it to 30. It'll push it to 39.
Oh, okay. I never heard past 33 AD.
Well, just math. If he was born in 6 CE and he died in 33, 39.
Yeah, so he started his ministry around 30, and he was, according to John, he preached about 3 years.
Yeah, so that
33 years.
Yeah, so that would put his death around 39 CE.
Yeah, if he was right, if the census was a 6 CE. So I've never, I've never seen anybody put it that late. I always see it between 27 and 33.
Yeah, and it's been kind of like the reason why people put it. Okay, so the reason why is put at 33 is because when the Gregorian calendar was introduced, they presuppose the year of it starts based on the year that they claim Jesus was born, right? So that's why it's 0 and 33 is the year that he died. The problem with that is that the Gregorian calendar doing that doesn't account for the fact that according to Luke, he had been born in 6, according to Matthew 6 CE, according to Matthew, it's either 6 BCE or 4 BCE, somewhere around that time frame. So the Gregorian calendar is off, right? Like, but all calendars are off. No calendar is actually correct, but it's off.
I think that's what I'm trying to point out to you. It's like okay, with that 6 CE starting point, I'm saying that I don't think Luke has 6 CE in mind. Whether the census did happen in 6 CE, that may be a mistake that Luke makes. Like,
well, it's not a mistake that Luke is making because Luke would not have known about the Gregorian calendar because it hadn't been implemented yet or created yet.
Right. I'm saying about just the dating itself. When you say they didn't know about dating it from 6 CE, I don't think they're making the argument. I don't think Luke's making the argument that he born 6 CE. I think he's making the argument he was born in Herod's time. Like he might have took the census that was in 6 CE and mixed that up. You know what I'm saying? That might have been where the mix-up was happening. But
I don't understand what you're saying because the Luke version is saying that Jesus was born during that census. So he is indicating.
Right. I'm saying that could be a mistake. That could be a mistake in itself. You know what I'm saying? Because they're making up these stories to get them back to fulfill the prophecy.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's a mistake. Well, I wouldn't say it's a mistake. It was a vehicle that I think it's a vehicle that Luke used in order to get Joseph and Mary in Bethlehem so that it could fit the Old Testament that the Messiah would come out of the Messiah would come out of Bethlehem. So it's just a vehicle used to get them there. Matthew doesn't utilize a vehicle to get them there at all. He just says that they were in Bethlehem, right? So
but I think Luke is getting his information from somebody else. While Matthew, I don't think Luke is making something up. I don't think he created this.
Luke is getting his information as a follower of Paul. Luke is getting his information, according to what Luke says, from other people in and around Judea who are telling this story.
Exactly.
We don't know where Matthew is getting all of his birth story from. For all we know, Matthew just making shit up in order for it to fit some of the Old Testament.
Used to be my favorite one too, but I'm like, he's making this shit up.
Yeah, so both of them are making the story up to fit certain thought processes that the people had concerning the Old Testament, and Luke concerning the Old Testament, but also concerning the Gentiles. And that's another aspect that you have to look at it. Luke is writing towards Gentiles. He's not really writing for the Jewish people, right? So they're writing based on their perspective of what they're trying to get across to the people, what they want people to, how they can make people believe this story, right? So if Matthew wants Jewish people, the Israelites, to believe this story, he has to make it Jewish centric. If Luke wants Gentiles to believe this story, it has to be Roman and Greek centric, right? And that's why you got the difference in the writings of Paul, because Paul is making the Jesus movement more Greek, whereas Matthew and Mark are making it more Jewish. And then it's interesting, Matthew borrows a lot from Mark, like directly quotes Mark. Most scholars think that the writer of Matthew had a copy of Mark when he was writing.
Or there was the Q, what they call the Q source. I never believed in the Q source until I read, if you read the letter of Clement of Rome, he actually quotes what he called the gospel of Jesus. He doesn't say Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, but he quotes directly from Matthew and Luke. But when he quotes from Matthew, he quotes. It's like it's more to it, like a specific thing. It was something Jesus said to Peter. I forgot what it was, but no, it was about asking about how many times should I forgive my brother, and Jesus said 7 times 70. But when he continued, Clement continued the story. So, and then when you would read the book of Thomas, when you read the Gospel of Thomas, it seemed like all of these Gospels are kind of, pulling from somewhere, So I'm thinking it may have been a centralized story that these people are taking, like you said, Mark, Matthew took from Mark, but they may have been just taken from the same source, and they were adding their own stuff.
Could have been. I mean, many people do think that Gospel of Thomas is this mythological QLM that helped them to complete the Bible, complete the Gospels. Those Gospels didn't even get their names until Irenaeus named them in around 180 is when Irenaeus gave them their names. Justin Martyr just called them the Gospel of the Apostles. I mean, Wisdom of the Apostles in 150. So, but basically,
read Clement's letter, because in Clement he actually quotes some that I saw in Thomas also. So, like you said, they didn't quote, like you said, they didn't split it up. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. At least I don't see that there yet.
Yeah,
like I said, but
basically,
I think that Irenaeus is a little late to say that. I understand that might be the oldest thing we have, but that don't mean it wasn't called that before. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes when we say stuff like, one thing I disagree with you on, like when you talk about the Mises theory being the oldest, like
the what theory?
Hesitation to Israel or whatever. One of the theories you talked about.
Oh, Manetha.
The Manetha theory. But to me, for them to talk about Israel, I mean Israel had to exist before this theory. So you can say that don't mean that's when they first showed up.
Okay, so you obviously didn't listen, understand what I said by that. The first indication of them that we have is the Manetha stela. But I've said it many times, and I'll say it again, and I agree with you. In order for there to be a people group named Israelites in 1204, 1208, when Manetha put the stele up, created that stela, then those people group had to exist prior to that, right? Now, where it becomes problematic in the effect of trying to put them as far back as the Bible is saying so, if they were around, say in the 1500s or the 1400s, which is when the Bible is indicating them, then there should be other writings about them before them, which is why people are trying to make them a part of the Amarna letters, or trying to make them part of other writings, but they're just not. They're not there. So if they didn't separate from the Canaanites, they could have separated from the Canaanites in 1250 and been a migrating nomadic group of people for 50 years or 40 years before Manetha encountered them. But they weren't a people group for 200 years, 300 years.
Well, they didn't have, according to the scriptures, they didn't have a nation yet. So wouldn't that kind of, you know what I'm saying? Because they was wandering. would they really be talked about like that? Well, I hear you.
Yeah, if you had this,
because they conquering people and all that stuff.
if you had this large ass group of people wandering around like that, yeah, they would. That's noticeable. You would notice almost 2 million people, you know, walking around in the 13th century. Just like like the Hebrew people were noticed in the 13th or the 14th century BCE. That's when their Amarna letters were written. They would have noticed 2 million people walking around or establishing these kingdoms and whatnot, these city states, and destroying people if it was the Hebrew people. But Hebrew is just means poor, is these a cast of poor marauding people who was bothering. And see, understand, they were
close.
No, but it don't matter if it sounds kind of close. Sounding kind of close don't make it. And plus the Hebrew people were a mixture of different people, and these people were marauders. They were raiders. These were bandits. These some of them became mercenaries and were hired in by these different vassal states of Egypt. But what you have is the Amarna letters were being sent to Amenhotep III and Akhenaten to say that, hey, since we are being controlled by Egypt and we're in the Levant and Mesopotamian area, and these bandits are running wild, we need you to send some people to come help us, right? That would be in conflict also with the fact of them just wandering around the Sinai Peninsula for 40 years and the lower parts of the Levant before they actually came into the areas that the Amarna letters were being written from, because they weren't in the vicinity, according to the Bible, of the vassal states that was writing these letters to the Pharaoh of Egypt.
Okay, I gotta check that out. I haven't looked into those letters. I'm gonna send you this this documentary. You might have already seen it before, but it kind of talks about how the 12 tribes of Israel were formed and stuff like that. And it's kind of saying that the actual nation is really like a mismatch of other people, or people that have came together and it became a coalition basically. And so I don't know if you might have seen it already, but it's like a YouTube thing. I want to send that to you, see what you think about it.
Okay, you send it to me. But yeah, and I think that they are a bunch of, to me, from what I can see, they are simply a group of Canaanite people who just separated from the Canaanite people who are directly under Egyptian rule. And then they tried to go separate themselves. They ran into they ran into problems. They ran into problems against Egypt. And then the only reason they were able to survive is because of the Bronze Age collapse. That's it. And they are a mixture. And you gotta understand
about the Bronze Age collapse. What caused it, and what does that really mean?
Oh, well, we're not 100% sure what caused it. Most people think that there was just a severe drought that occurred in that Eastern Mediterranean area. And because of that drought, they pretty much went through a Great Depression kind of situation in the Mediterranean. And that allowed for the Phoenicians to be able to defeat the Egyptians, which pretty much took away their power in the Levant and Mesopotamia. And then the Levant and Mesopotamia became like a shooting gallery, Wild West situation, where different warlords were able to establish themselves. Different people groups were able to establish themselves as independents. And they were able to do that for a couple of 100 years until the Hittites came in there and whooped all their asses.
Okay, yeah, it sounds real similar to this documentary I'm talking about. The same documentary. What you're saying sounds really similar to what this documentary was saying too. They talk about the Bronze Age and all that stuff also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we still don't know what caused that Bronze Age collapse, and but we just know that it started somewhere around 1100, the early 1100s BCE, lasted. Uh, People didn't really get a grip until around 900 BCE, when things kind of even their way out, and then that's the beginning of. I think that's the beginning of the early Iron Age. Could be wrong about that.
Right. Okay. All right, Coach Rez, I got to bounce.
All right, man.
Good talking with you as always.
Right. Good talking to you too.
All right.
All right. Yeah, and trying to hold them down to one group, I don't think you can hold Israelites, the creation of Israelites, down to one group. People like to throw the Hyksos in there. They like to throw the Shashu, some of the Moabites ones, some of the other different Canaanite groups. Literally, you can just almost throw any group of people that worship the Canaanite pantheon, because effectively that's where their story really begins, as some Semitic Canaanite group. And remember, Canaanite doesn't mean one group of people. Canaanite is like an overarching name for all the Semitic groups of people. So you could be a Canaanite but be Shashu. You could be a Canaanite but be a Habaru. You could be Canaanite and be a. I think the Phoenicians. Well, not. Phoenicians came out of Canaanites. So you can be a Canaanite. You could come out of the Canaanites and be of different names, different smaller groups, different divisions, kind of like different denominations, of one main people. Perfect example. You could be African and you could be Arab. You could be African, you could be Nigerian, be African, but you're South African. You could be African, but you're Ethiopian. You could be African, but you could be Indian have Indian heritage because of so many that was brought over. You can be African and be all, but also be something else within a smaller subgroup of being African. So when you're Canaanite, that's like being African, but then you are something more of a subgroup. You could be European, but you're French or you're German, and so on and so forth. So we got different names. What time? Oh, country. You got too much noise. Country. Okay. I want to bring your own, but you got a whole lot of noise in the background. So if you can take care of that noise, then unmute yourself after you take care of that noise. Can you hear me, country? That was a lot of noise. Let me see. Can I unmute him now? Let me see. No. So country, your microphone is muted, but you have to do the unmuting now after I muted you. No. But you can't have all that noise in the background. I don't know if maybe you hit the button by accident. I'm not sure. Shashu, Aparu, Hebrew, different labels, same reality. Canaanites, yes, ambiguous. Yes, it is. Okay. Oh, you hit it by accident. That's cool. That's cool. I'll close it out for you. There you go. Trust me, I do that on other people's lives sometimes. Why is every number in creation calling me today? Oh, I know why. Because we get new insurance, and I hate when you do one of those things and then everybody and their mama want to call you. It's just, so yeah, and I don't know, maybe I'll do a video about the Armana letters, but that'll be a long form video, because the Hebrew doesn't necessarily mean that a person is Hebrew, but they want to take it because it sounds close and make it seem like that. Let me look that up real quick. So Habaru or Aparu were a diverse group of people in the ancient Fertile Crescent, known from texts spanning the second millennium. So second millennium will be 2000 BCE, rather than a single ethnic group. They were described variously as outlaws, raiders, mercenaries, or dispatched laborers living on the fringes of settled society. While their name is linguistically related to the biblical term Hebrew, the Hebrew were not exclusively Hebrew. Their connection to the biblical Israelite is subject of ongoing scholarly debate. So you got people who want to fit the Bible into history, will then make these people part of try to make those people be the Bible people. Say, oh, they meant Hebrew, but they was talking about the Hebrew people, and they was going around causing problems, and this would have been seen as a problem for Egyptian society if the Moses Joshua story was a true story. It just doesn't fit, because the Hebrew people never conquered Ai. They never conquered Jericho. They didn't conquer all these other cities that the Bible is claiming that the Hebrew people ended up conquering. Right? And these Hebrew people go from Egypt to Canaan to Syria to Anatolia. They cover such a large area, and it covering areas that the Bible version of the story never covers, right? So this is merely trying to force their story to fit history when it just doesn't. And let's see. Now, it would fit the narrative that some scholars are saying that David was a warlord. It would fit if David was a part of the Hebrew people who he was a warlord and then established his own city state in Jerusalem, and then changed the name from Hebrew to Hebrew, and then made up this damn history. That would be more likely than the biblical story. But the story is completely unlikely, point blank, period. It's an unlikely story. And to the subject matter that's on the board, if these people were not in the existence that the Bible is talking about, well, if they were in the existence that the Bible is talking about, history counters it by demonstrating that Jericho and those other cities that they claim to have defeated weren't even in the situation that they claimed them to be in. There were no walls around Jericho during the time frame that the Bible would indicate that Joshua came in there and blew some trumpets, and just a prostitute was able to survive. So like I said earlier, the Bible loves its prostitutes. Maybe Christians should be saying prostitution should be legal, because look at Tamara, look at Rahab. God loves them prostitutes. So we need to stop demonizing these women in the sex work industry. But one of the things that makes all of this stuff so intriguing, but yet also difficult, is because of what Kevin is saying, the everlasting editorial pen. The everlasting, I forgot to use that term. Thank you for bringing it back. The everlasting editorial pen has has created so much chaos and confusion because the pen says one thing, but as we've grown in our science, we now say, oh no, that what the pen said is wrong. But the pen also creates problems, as Lo was bringing up. The pen, because Tertullian writes something about an earlier, a possible earlier census, all of a sudden you got believers who say, well, the early church fathers said, or even some historians, whether it's Tacitus, Pliny, Josephus, they wrote something from a historical standpoint. None of them are actually writing at the time frame. So even when Josephus writes about when Quirinius was governor, but it can be some penmanship. The only difference between people like that is Josephus was living in an apartment in Rome, an apartment that the emperor Vespasian gave him. So he would have had access to the Roman documentation that would show that this is when Quirinius was a legatus in Syria. And this is the things that he accomplished. These were his awards. This was, who the dude was. This is when he became a governor. Because what he was talking about, what some people were saying about Josephus, is Josephus does still have Quirinius as a legate in 6. And of course, Luke says he's a governor. Let me see if I can go back to that. But whether he was now see, if when I was talking to the other guy, this would have been a point. Whether he was a governor or a legate, or maybe he got promoted to governorship when he was sent down to do this in Syria, the main point is both of them, no matter what his title was, has him going into Judea in 6 to do this census, because the one that Augustus Caesar authorized was in 6 CE. The other aspect of it, there was another point that just fell out of my damn head. Oh, because even Pliny, not Pliny, but Tacitus, when Tacitus writes about Pontius Pilate, he gives him the wrong rank when he's talking about Pontius Pilate supposedly killed their Messiah. He doesn't get Pilate's rank correct when he does it. So I'm not saying that any of these so-called historians, are 100% correct. They can make mistakes. But I will say that Josephus had more access to the Roman records than Luke would have had to the Roman records. Josephus is also writing earlier than Luke. But access to more accurate information would have been on Josephus' side than Luke's side, because Luke is getting the primary of his information from other people in and around Judea, Antioch, all that area. And if you're just taking accounts, this person tells this story, you go do some research. This person tells the story, you go do some research, and then you just have to come to your own consensus of, all right, what is most likely right, since I'm writing this, about 70, 80 years after this shit supposedly happened. So it's a clusterfuck. And the fact that people will put their belief, their life, based on this, it's foolishness to me. You might as well put your belief in the Greek gods or the Ephod gods or the Shinto gods or any of the other gods, because they have just as much validity as the Bible. Now, let's see. Are there anything else you guys wanted to talk about? If you're not, I get off here, I eat my lunch, and then I'll shoot the videos I want to shoot and sit here patiently waiting on my wife while I watch. My relationship with gravity. It's just funny. My relationship with gravity hasn't always been good. We've had our ups and downs. I just had to put that. Oh, you can't do this. You can't do this out of Babylon. Prostitution is symbolic in the Bible. The whore who rides the beast isn't literal. She represents earthly wisdom who rules over us, the kings of the earth. You cannot take what it may mean in Revelations and then put that as if it's speaking with one voice into the story of Tamara and Judah. She prostituted herself to Judah. You can't put that in the story of Jericho as a symbolic thing. When the spies went into their house, into the prostitute's house, the prostitute lied for them, and then that saved her family. You can't take Revelations and put that in Joshua. You can't take Revelations and put that in Genesis. It doesn't work. The Bible doesn't speak with one voice. So no, Tamara, Rahab has nothing to do with the prostitute who rides the beast. The prostitute who rides the beast, yes, I can take that symbolically as nations who go against this God. And even in the other Old Testament writing, the God of the Bible says that Israel will prostitute itself to other gods. That's symbolic prostitution based on the literal prostitution. Tamara and Rahab are talking about literal prostitution. Right? And I'm going to disagree with you on this one too. All the Bible is parabolic. None of these people existed. That is simply just not true. That's simply not true. There are people who are mentioned in the Bible who actually existed. Everything is not some type of symbolism, metaphor, allegory, right? These people actually believe that this was their literal history. But we know any kingship in the Bible from Hezekiah on, those kingships are generally accepted to be people who existed. When they mention Sennacherib, he existed. So there are people in there who exist. Omri and Mesha existed. Did the angels and shit that they talk about and stuff that happen or exist? Most likely not. So you sweeping statements rarely are true. It is rare that a sweeping statement is true. So Lord Megatron, I'm gonna stop. Lord Megatron, you gonna stop saying crazy stuff. He said Jesus invited prostitutes to dine with him, and he's the light of the world. I do it, and it ruins Thanksgiving. ah, oh, man, that's funny. That's funny. It's funny to me. That's funny to me. Isaac, are you talking to me? So when you say Jericho couldn't have happened because the timeline doesn't match up, do you accept that as truth? Do I accept Jericho? What are you talking about? if you're talking to me. I usually understand what I'm saying. Wasn't a messenger considered an angel? Yeah, most of the time in the Old Testament, when they talk about a messenger of God, it is generally an angel. That is generally one of the angels of this God that is being sent down to talk to the people, to provide information. But yeah, these are supposed to be like the B'nai Elohim, the sons of God, which is what we call angels. Of course, some Christians would call some of the angels demons. Demons are angels. Well, yeah, like they're angelic beings as well. Actually, I was listening to this video about how I wanted to look that up because I heard him say it, but I wasn't sure, and I didn't have time. Shit, I don't know where it's at. I know it's in Exodus. So, oh well, excuse me, got to put a little more to it. Exodus chapter 3. It might help if I highlight this. Yeah, you know how we always assume that the burning bush was God? It's kind of interesting because it says that Moses was keeping a flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led his flock beyond the wilderness and came to Mount Horeb, the mountain of God. There, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of a bush. He looked, and the bush was ablaze. Bush was blazing, yet it was not consumed. Moses said, I must turn aside and look at this great sight to see why the bush is not burning up. Then the Lord saw that, and then the Lord, Tetragrammaton, saw that he had turned aside to see. God called to him out of the bush, and Moses, he said, here I am. So the bush is first described as the angel of the Lord appearing to him in a burning bush, and then the Lord called out to him out of the bush. And come no closer, the sandals on your feet, and the place where you're standing is holy ground. He said, further, I am the God, your father, God. Jacob, Moses turned, hid his face, and he was afraid. So basically, if this bush is an angel of the Lord burning in this bush, but then the Lord came out and spoke to him from the bush. This is this angel taking on the tetragrammaton of lordship of God, right? Taking on the power of God, the head of God, the image of God. So it's interesting. I found that interesting how the Bible makes those types of statements. And I came across that because I was researching the whole Trinity thing again, and how the Trinity is why there is so much fight about the Trinity, what kind of misunderstandings or understandings that people had. I was asking him if he accepted the data that disproved it. Oh, you was talking to somebody else. Okay, cool. Yeah, so you got I've always grown up thinking that the burning bush was God, right? But according when you read the story, it said that it was an angel of the Lord appeared as the burning bush, and then this God spoke through the angel, representing this God and saying that he is God, which reminds me of the Jesus character representing this God, saying he is God. There's precedence for non-God entities. That's not a trinity, because you wouldn't say that the angel of the Lord is part of the Trinity, but they are acting and representing and speaking as if they are this God, making the claim that they are this God. So could not Jesus have been saying the same? And this was one of the huge arguments that was going on in first, second, and third up to the fourth century CE in Christianity, of the argument of who was Jesus, what was Jesus, because of this type of argument. Right? So this is why the Trinity never becomes universal until late fourth century CE. But many Christians viewed it differently, and that's one of the thought processes. The walls of Jericho happened. Chris Jericho. I did not care for him as a wrestler. I wasn't a fan of Chris Jericho. He looked like a little troll to me. Athletic as hell, but looked like a little troll. It said Angels, the original Bluetooth speaker, pretty much. The angel was what the angel of the Lord was inserted in a place where the original meaning to be Yahweh, because Yahweh was taboo to interact directly with Yahweh. So you're saying, if I'm saying you correctly, the angel was placed there so that because Moses couldn't interact directly with him, but that doesn't fit Moses going later on in the story. Moses going up to the mountain, he's talking directly to God. God showing up in the tent, Moses talking directly to this God. So wouldn't it still be written in the same way when he goes and talks to this God on top of the mountain? If that was the case. And yeah, if that's the case, because let's see. Exodus 19, 1 through 30, 1 through 34. All right, let's see. And this third new one, Israel had gone out of the land of Egypt on the very day they came to the wilderness. The journey there. Moses went up to God, and the Lord, all caps, came to him from the mountain. Thus, you shall say to the house of Jacob, tell the house of Israel, and the Egypt have borne you out. Yeah, nothing but an angel. He didn't come to him as an angel. He just came straight up as the Lord. Later on, Moses would speak to God, would answer him in thunder. That's good. When the Lord descended on Mount Sinai on the top of the mountain, the Lord summoned Moses to the top of the mountain. Moses went up. Then the Lord said to Moses, go down and warn the people not to break through to see the Lord. Otherwise, many of them will perish. Yeah, no angel of the Lord in place. What did I do to make this doing? This is doing something stupid. I don't want to share this link. Okay, thank you. And I agree, Becca. You think if this guy wanted us to know the story, know what was right, he wouldn't have been asking for so much cryptic, these authors to be writing things in these cryptic formats, right? And just make everything plain and clear. But everything is all wrapped up differently, right? And, I can understand what Isaac is indicating by them, because they had this thing like you couldn't say the name of the Lord. You couldn't say it. So in order to replace that, they came up with the Tetragrammaton. Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. We only say Yahweh because we've added vowels to it. There are no vowels in the Hebrew language. It was just sounds, and these sounds had representation of meaning. So we added vowels later on. That's what we did, Yahweh. But even the Yahweh and all the all caps, the Tetragrammaton is not the name of this God, but it is representing when they are meaning the name of this God. So the Tetragrammaton itself is the replacement for the name. So when it says the angel of the Lord, it is talking about one of the B'nai Elohims, one of the sons of this God. So it would be an angel. So Exodus 3 would indicate it's an angel that's the burning bush, and it's being specific about it. Other times, it is very specific when it just says Moses went and talked to this God. Right? Now, I think even when Abraham was talking to this guy, he was talking. This God showed up and some angels with him, and then they had a conversation. The angels go into Sodom. The God doesn't go into Sodom, but then the God comes back into Sodom, and then starts destroying it and goes back up into the heavens to actually destroy it. Out about if Coach ever does a show about death, why we die today, and is death natural or a curse of a disobedience, I would love to call and share all I know. I believe we can beat it. Shit, you can call in right now and tell me that one. Matter of fact, I'll put the link. This show ain't got to be, trust me, at this stage of the show, which we max 30 more minutes, but it may not be that long. It may not be that long. Fred, I don't know what y'all don't pay no attention to Fred. Fred be saying dumb shit. Like the shit he just said is stupid. Check out the verbal epithet Yahweh in the Mari text. Okay, I check that out. The Mari text. Where's my note? Put it up here. Y'all be trying to give me too much homework. And go look up the Mari text. Now, if we can beat, we can't beat death. There is no such thing as death. Now, if you're just talking about the fact that we stay in this corporal body, and there's a way to stay in this corporal body, this matter body, this meat suit, this poverty. Yeah, I like to hear that. Yeah, you click on that link. Make sure when it asks you when it asks for to be allowed for your camera and your microphone, make sure you say yes to that so that it'll allow you. And then if that will allow you to be able to come up. You don't have to then turn your camera on. You can turn your camera off if you want to. It's all up to you. I don't know why Fred think he can demand that I answer his question. I answer whatever the hell I want to. It's a stupid question. That's why I'm not answering it. Didn't you say we had homework? Oh yeah. Thank you for reminding me about that Center Star. Did any of you guys do any research on a Boltzmann brain? I talked about that Friday. Did any of y'all do any research on a Boltzmann brain? I'm going to be so disappointed if y'all didn't do it. Because I just wanted to hear your thoughts on what do you think about that thought experiment of a Boltzmann brain? It has some problems, of course, like I said when I talked about it. But I want to know what you guys' thoughts are on the boatsman brain. Oh, the book I showed to the audience last week. This is pretty much always on my desk. It's called technically you should be read as the parallel sayings of Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, and Lao Tzu. The parallel sayings of Buddha, Krishna, Lao. Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, and Lao Tzu. The parallel sayings. Oh, Center Star, you forgot? Oh, that's why you brought it up. So yeah, so that was the name of the book. It's a good book. I liked it when I first got it. About shit, when did I buy this? It's in the 2000 teens when I bought this book by Richard J. Hooper. And it'll have like little titles, chapters where it's talking about a certain subject matter, and it'll show you like what each person said from different perspectives. A lot of the things that are attributing the Jesus character that are sounding very similar to Krishna, Buddha, and Lao Tzu are coming from some of your Gnostic Gospels. Yeah, Lao Tzu wrote the Tao Te Ching. What is this one talking about? I just opened it up. No, so like how Jesus said, follow me and leave the dead to bury the dead, according to Matthew. The Bhagavad Gita said, many are the path of men, though all those path end in me for those who love me. So Krishna said, for those who love, the path ends in those who love him. Buddha said, those who follow the way are like dry grass. They need to be protected from the flames of desire, because you know that desire thing is a big thing. Lao Tzu says that act in harmony with the way, and you will become the way. Nurture the way within yourself, and you will live a virtuous life. Like me some Lao Tzu. And then some of it, like I said, comes from the other ones, like the Jesus character, and according to the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, which also has parallels in the Gospel of Thomas, Gospel of Matthew, Gospel of Luke. True humanity is within you. Seek and you will find it. Of course, the Matthew version goes a long way with that. Seek and you will find it. Krishna says, follow the way of righteousness, for it leads to the highest goals. Buddha says, to follow the way is goodness. To conform to the way is greatness. So to follow it is goodness, but to conform to it is greatness. Like your old school teacher. And then Tao Te Ching said, to have knowledge of the way is good. Conforming to the way is best. This has been a reading of the parallel sayings. Oh, that's a lot of noise. All right, that's better.
I ain't got a lot of time to talk either. My phone at 12%.
Oh, okay.
The charger right there.
Yeah, but I can't hear all this background noise on here.
I understand that you just said about background noise. I heard that word.
Hello, am I on?
Yeah.
All right, because like I said, I just had to step out the job. So give me a second. Collect my thoughts. Take my apron off. But yeah, what I be saying because you know I ran into your show. I like talking to y'all because y'all actually respond to me. So I appreciate that. But you know, for me, the Bible is all parabolic. And the main lesson that we need to know today is how to live and love one another. And we're not doing that.
Okay.
And so the Bible teaches us that we can beat death today. And all that stuff that happened in the past was just men under the carnal mind doing bad and awful things, and blaming God for it, saying they're doing it for God. Just like we see today. We see two countries go to war and both sides fight for good. No side want to be Cobra. And we see that. Both sides G.I. Joe. No side want to be Cobra. But who got them fighting?
Now, I got the reference that you said. But you cannot say that the whole thing is parabolic, because the whole thing is not parables. It is, a lot of it is written to be literal history of literal things that supposedly happened. Like this whole wall of Jericho thing is a literal thing that's supposed to have literally happened, and demonstrates how being obedient to this God, and he will give you cities to destroy, kill, and genocide everything that breathes, right? And this is the establishment of the Israelite kingdoms that will come after it. So this is not meant to be a parable. This is meant to be literal. Hello? Hello? Nope. I guess that 12, that power of 12, power, that power status of 12 must have hit real quick, or he had to go back into work. Oh, so he got raptured. Divinely autistic said he got raptured. No, that's supposed to be tomorrow. You remember, Brother Joseph changed it to tomorrow. So, we'll see if we get raptured up tomorrow. Tomorrow and the next day, 7th and the 8th. We both all, well, I ain't getting raptured up, of course, but, some of these Christians are supposed to get raptured up tomorrow. In the Mari archives, you will find personal names like Yahweh Dagon, Yahweh Adu, and Yazrael. Okay. I don't recall reading that ever, but I'll check it out. I put in the comments the boatsman brain. It's it's a thought experiment. It's not a full theory. It's not a definite explanation of things. But the boatsman, just to titillate you a little bit, the boatsman brain, it was a thought experiment done in the late 1800s, early 1900s, that suggested that after the universe was created, that with certain molecules or whatnot, atoms, structures bouncing around, they would a conscious brain would come into existence, not a corporeal brain, but a conscious brain would come into existence with already having memories of itself and believing that itself was eternal. And then with its thought manifest life in the universe, so to speak. It's an interesting thought experiment. I just want to see what you guys thought were on that one. It's problematic. It doesn't conform to some of our known science, but of course, some of our known science sometimes is found to be partially incorrect or needing more information because it doesn't fulfill the wholeness of what's going on or what happened. But I just thought it'd be a good something for you guys to read and think about. And I just want to hear you guys' thoughts on it since I read it. Now, I read it for about 4 hours. I am not saying you guys are going to read that. You can just read the Wikipedia version of it, but there's a lot of additional information that you can find about it beyond what Wikipedia says. When are you going to deconstruct Islam? I've never been Islamic, so never. I've never been any of those. What happened, man?
Oh man, I think the sweat from my face knocked the phone out. It must have hit airplane mode or something. I'm sorry, man. I don't even know why I left out. I realized I.
So did you hear me? This joker. All right. So So all right, hold on. I'll bring that back. This is Joker phone. Out of Babylon, your phone keep coming up and then it drop off, and then it come up and drop off. So Marcus Sweet said, when are you going to deconstruct Islam? Never, because I didn't come out of Islam. I haven't studied Islam deep enough to feel sufficient enough to do it. Even though I can get, I can talk about surface level things as to why I would never follow Islam. I couldn't deconstruct it to the same way I could do the Bible, so that's why I don't do it. There are plenty of other people who do, so I let them have at it. So, or any of your favorite man-made doctrines that you use to free yourself. See, now that would indicate you're saying that psychology and philosophies, which are, yes, are man-created, man-thought processes to get to a certain point. But if that's your standpoint, then you're suggesting that you should walk around and not teach a person nothing, not read nothing, not understand nothing, not have anybody else's perspective on anything concerning anything, and just come up with every damn thing on your own self and let that be. So whatever desert island you're going to find to do that, you can, but that's an impossibility. All right, try some.
Yeah, let's try it again. I'm gonna keep the phone away from my face. I see if getting out the app is problem.
So did you hear me say how the story of Jericho has to be a literal story, because this is them saying this is our history, this is how this is part of how we established our kingdom. So it's not a parable story. So the whole Bible cannot then be parabolic.
I mean, but when you talk about kingdom and you talk about Jericho, you talking about one literal city, right?
I mean, in that instance, yeah, but we can go on for multiple cities that they claim that they had conquered and destroyed. It's like about 300 and some odd cities that they claim that they destroyed and conquered, or made the people genocided the people, or made the people into slaves.
Now, remember what I said, that, in the Old Testament, I don't believe that some outside force came to visit somebody, more or less that you had, again, people, leaders of the people who had knowledge of God, but because they were carnal minded, it was light mixed with dark. And by common sense, I know if I turn the light bulb in the room, light wins. But if you have light and dark in your head, as in the picture of God, how strong does the dark have to be to cover up that light switch?
Yeah, but
so
what is God then?
Say, what is God?
Yeah, you have to be able to establish God. So
yeah, God is spirit, and God is love, which is the male aspect of the spirit, which means that brings forth the action into this physical world. Like I like to eat. I like a sandwich. I like ham sandwiches or something. My love or my desire for that ham sandwich gets me up to bring that physical act into the world.
So you're saying
you have wisdom. Wisdom is the female aspect of the spirit of God. So you're dealing with love and wisdom, and it's in a vessel, which is us.
Okay, so, but how can you say that love and wisdom are gods? Those are emotions.
Not gods. I said spirit.
Okay.
These like let me give you another example. Like what came first? The thought of a pencil or a pencil?
Of course, the thought of a pencil.
So God represents, if you don't want to look at it as something like wisdom and love, it represents consciousness, pure consciousness.
So God is not an intelligent being.
No, God didn't say God wasn't an intelligent being. God represents the pure state of I am. I'm living. That's God.
Okay, but who is that?
That's us.
So you're saying each individual person is God?
You say what? Yes, they're a representation of the consciousness of God.
So they're a representation of the consciousness of God.
I mean, because you're dealing with spirit. Spirit is invisible.
So how can you demonstrate the existence of this overarching?
All right, let me give you another example. Do you believe in the wind?
I don't believe in the wind. I know the wind.
All right, you know the wind exists. And how do you know the wind exists? Because it's invisible.
Not because I can measure it. I can see my curtains blowing right now
There
because
you go. You observe the things that it influences. So it's the same way with God in the spiritual realm. I can't see wisdom. I can't see knowledge. I can't see love, but I can see how it is demonstrated in the people around me.
I don't need a God to demonstrate to see that love.
I mean, no, what you're looking at is the physical image of God. What you're seeing is the demonstration of love and wisdom within each person and how they act, good or bad.
But see, that demonstrates that we have love, we have wisdom. It doesn't demonstrate there is a God that is putting that love and wisdom into us, and then we manifest it as the effects of that God.
So right now we're at a state of trying to prove that there's a God, right? In any way, shape, or form.
Well, yeah, in order to make that claim, you have to be able to prove that God exists.
Okay, and I would say to that, if you need proof of God existing, why not simply do the things that's stated in the book?
I don't know what you mean by
That is
that.
the only proof. That is the only proof that I can demonstrate by which I can prove to you that God is alive and that God is real. It's by actually doing what it said. And right now we are at the point where we should know to love one another.
Okay, but if you're gonna do the things that the God in the book do, then you should be able to heal someone, bring an amputee, let their legs grow back, arms grow back. You should be able to walk on water.
Hold on, you broke up. I heard kill someone.
What I'm saying is that you should
You
be
say
able,
what now?
if you're saying that you should to prove that God, you do the things that are in the book. Now it's more than just showing some love and showing some wisdom. You should be able to walk on some water. You should be able to heal some amputees and give them limbs.
Again, and I will rebuttal that by saying, one, that the story isn't literal. So I don't believe it was literally walking on water, because again, the sea, the waves, and the turmoil is the people to me.
Okay, so
like I said, I deal with the parables. I don't want to go into the literal, because I understand that this book is teaching everybody a lesson,
well,
not just a particular city or a state. Because like I told you, Israel is all of us.
yeah,
Israel doesn't mean Israel. The firstborn means like say when you was born, right? Before you learned you was a male, before you learned you was black, before you learned you was Cherokee or anything else, before you learned you was straight or gay, before you learned it was good or evil, that represents Israel. That spirit in that vessel that knew no good nor evil. The only thing that you could look at to bring you to this point was God. Whoever took care of you to bring you to this point until you got to a point of self-ego.
so couldn't I say that we are okay? So one, I think that's picking and choosing. I'm gonna make it parable, so I don't have to be able to demonstrate all the other things that happen in the Bible.
The Bible states that it's all parables.
Hold on, I didn't interrupt you. I didn't
I'm
interrupt.
sorry. Go ahead.
You by saying that, then it's picking and choosing that I can pick these things that I don't have to show any type of physical demonstration, and I can just make it all metaphorical and metaphysical. And so I can just state claims, and at the same time, I can then look and say, well, we are not Israel. I can get the same type of thought process by saying that we all come from the Tao Te Ching, or from Buddhism, or from any other book, any other religion.
I agree with that. I believe if I was born, I'm not arguing any of these points. I believe if I was born, say in a Middle Eastern country, I'll be approaching you in this conversation from the Quran.
Yep, I can agree with you.
I do not deny all of these things. I do not keep my faith in no book. These books are man-made.
But so is the gods, because there have been gods.
And again, I agree with all of these things. That's why I say ultimately we are God. I see nothing above us. The only good that I see comes from us. The only bad I see comes from us. Now, like I say, homelessness and hunger can be solved in a day, but what keeps us from working for a piece of paper? What
Okay,
we've been taught.
so then you agree that there is no God.
No, I agree that the living God is us.
Okay. Well, earlier it seemed like you was indicating that there is a
Well, like
God.
I said, the Father is pure consciousness.
Huh?
The Father is pure consciousness, the pure state of our being. I am.
Who is the Father?
The Father is spirit. It's not no individual person.
Is this so? There is no individual consciousness spirit that is above us that we get it from. It's just us. Hello? Hello. Man, you need to, nah, I don't know what's going on with his phone. Hello. Okay, we have a problem. We just gonna kick that one because I'm about to be done in a minute here. Sterling, yeah, you go.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right. Yeah, I only do one person at a time. I saw you waving. I saw you, but I only do one person.
Oh, that's cool. And I respect that. And if the other person wants to come back and you want to put me backstage, that's cool too.
No, because I only got about 5 minutes and then I'm getting off here because I'm hungry.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, it's my first time here. I just found your channel and I just wanted to check it out and say hello.
Oh, hey, how you doing?
Do you
Appreciate it.
do you, do you get a lot of pushback for trying to or for deconstructing Christianity? Like,
Oh yeah. Like I got pushback going on right now in the comments. I always get pushback, like
well, let me ask you this: has it ever worked where like maybe
no.
somebody changed their mind?
Oh, yeah.
So you've like, in other words, you've kind of led people to change, or you've made people change their mind, sort of.
There are many people who say that, who come on and they will say that by listening to my videos and then going and do their own research, they deconstructed from Christianity.
Wow, wow, really? How long have you been doing this?
When I first started making videos around 2008.
Oh, wow, you've had this channel since then?
Yeah.
I've just never seen it, so I'm
Yeah.
surprised.
I mean, it's the algorithm.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I think the only way I found you was like I just searched, I think StreamYard or Open Panel, and then I changed my filter to live, and that's when I saw you.
Oh, okay. No, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So I just like to jump around and see what people are talking about. But I know you were about to leave. So how often do you stream?
Monday through Friday, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time is when I start.
Oh, okay, okay, great. Well, I guess I'll let you do your closing statement or whatever. I wish we had more time to chat, but I don't want to hold you.
Why did you ask that question about do people who give pushback then sometimes they do deconstruct? What was the purpose of that question?
Uh, I was just genuinely curious because, like, I
Are you?
subscribe to a lot of channels like this,
Mhm.
like atheist channels, Christian channels where they debate and all that, and I just rarely see anybody change their mind on either side. So I was just, I've never seen your work, so I was just curious, like how well it's working out, sort of, or whether that was your mission or your goal. And now that you tell me you've had some success, I'm curious as to how you do it.
No. Well, so are you a believer in the Bible?
No, no, no.
Uh,
Uh, I'm like a agnostic atheist, I would say.
okay. I mean, basically, I don't really approach things from the faith perspective or a metaphysical perspective. Um, for me, it is I provide the intellectual aspect of it based on archaeology, geology, um, historical references, things of that nature. Like it has to be. I just point out where the Bible is inaccurate as far as history is concerned and what we do know in science and so on and so forth. Uh, that is attractive to some people. It's not attractive to other people. Uh, and depending upon how a person best learned, that's that's what activates for them. So, like in this conversation about Jericho and his walls, if we can demonstrate that the story of Joshua and the walls of Jericho could not have happened, is a mythological story that's just being told because people just knew that hundreds of years ago these walls had fell, and they're just making a claim that they were the ones who did it. Then, if the story is fabricated, then those people didn't exist, then none of the rest of the Bible can stand. So that's the
Right.
problem.
Right, I get it. Like if one thing isn't true, then maybe they start to doubt all of it, right? Sort of.
Well, yeah, people will start doubting some of it, but there has to be a clear line for that doubt. It can't just be if one thing is wrong, then everything must be thrown away. But it has to be a core line that's being established here. So from the story of from Abraham, I mean from Adam, Adam has to be true. There are certain things that have to be true in order for Jesus to be this Messiah. And Adam, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Joshua, those things have to be true for the Jesus narrative to fit. But if those things aren't true, then the Jesus story can't fit, because if Abraham, let's say this conversation was about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, right? If Abraham doesn't exist, then Jacob can't exist. Then Jacob can't exist. And if Jacob doesn't exist, then Judah, his son Judah, cannot exist. If Judah doesn't exist, there is no lineage that would allow for Jesus to be the Messiah. So those kinds of line is what matters, right? If we were just talking about Jonah and the whale, that one really doesn't matter too much, as far as if that's a fairy tale, it doesn't say that the whole thing is it should be kicked to the curb. But if Jacob don't exist, then you kind of got to throw the rest of it away, because you don't get a Messiah, you don't get Jesus, you don't get the King David. There's no lineage back to Adam, and if there's no lineage back to Adam, their whole creation narrative is done away with. So this God is just a make believe.
Right, and in my experience, they weasel out of everything. They wiggle out of it, and they'll say, "Oh, well, that's just a parable. Oh, well, maybe it was on Mary's side of the lineage, or they're." I love to. I'm gonna look at your videos because I want to see like how you must be doing it really well, because on all the other channels that I visit, there's just always an excuse, and everyone just doubles down and shifts the goalpost. And yeah, but I don't want to repeat myself. But yeah, thank you for having
No,
me.
I appreciate it. Yeah, check it out. I appreciate you. Yeah, I'm going to get off here in a minute. So let me go ahead and get to my closings.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. I did want to, which was kind of still in this vein. Marcel said, what is your ultimate belief since you left Christianity? I don't believe things. It's things that I'm either going to know or I'm not. Now, there are certain things I may have a hope for, but it's just things I know or I don't know it. I don't remember you, but wanted to smoke a stick and deconstruct with you last November. Then you should be coming to our meetup here in October 31st. So call look in the link of this video after I'm done, or yesterday or last week's any live, and you'll see a link. Call, don't use the link because the link is over now, but call the hotel and meet us here October 31st, right? And tell them you're part of the Free Thinkers group. So meet us here October 31st in San Antonio through November 2nd. And we can smoke that stick together, sir, especially at our first meet and greet spot, which is going to be at Devil's River, which is a distillery. But yeah, my ultimate goal, I don't have an ultimate goal or an ultimate belief system, because I don't believe in anybody's gods. None of these gods existed. These are all man-made creations, right? So definitely, like I said, the links don't work anymore. You got to call the hotel. Tell them you're with the Free Thinkers group. You missed the deadline, but you still want to get in. They will make provisions for you. Okay, I'm confused by Marcel's statements. I'll probably swing by. Are you local? Because I need for the local people, I need the local people to DM me and let me know they're local so that we can get you up to the poolside areas when we meet at the poolside area. So if you're local, I need you to DM me. Or I'm confused by Marcel though. I'm driving. Okay, you are local. It's cracking me up how many local people. Some of your statements are confusing. You seem Christian or believer. Are you a believer, Marcel? Because I'm confused then by your statements. Because now you may not have been talking to me all most of the time. Because you said that you asked because it seems like a lot of energy to talk about something daily that you don't believe. It's not that much energy at all, actually. That's the thing about it. It really isn't. And now, if I had let's say I had a job, would I be on here like this? Hell, if I reopen one of my previous companies, would I? Okay, you've been back and forth for the last 4 months. I got you. Trust me, Marcel. You are not alone in that. But what else? Let me finish my thought first. If if I decide to reopen one of my old companies, I won't be on here like this. So this only gives this energy because I'm retired. But this is very interesting. I like it. I know I'm supposed to get off, and I'm about to get off for real. Marcel says that he is back and forth for the past 4 months. This is something, Marcel, that most of us who deconstructed, and some people go through the deconstruction process, and then they wind up saying, they stay with the religion. But everybody, I'm not saying everybody, that's finite. I would say 99% of the people who has ever deconstructed has a time frame in their life where they went back and forth, where they was like, I'm done with this, and then they fall back. Done with this, and then they go back. Done with this, and then they go back. And really, what I've really come to understand is that we have to evaluate the emotional attachment that we have to the religion. If you can take away the emotional attachment through study, through understanding, through thinking through it logically, through realizing that there is no such thing as death, by realizing that a good God would not ever create a hell, and that there is no such thing as hell. From that standpoint, then I'd be able to ask yourself and say, hey, okay, let me now evaluate this story, this book, this religion without the emotions and just looking at it for whatever it is. And then wherever it lands you, then you can go left or right. Oh, my bad. But Mark, he said he deconstructed for 5 years and now he came back to the faith about 4 months ago. That's also a common thing. It's not common, but it's not something that never happens. And people do that as well. They deconstruct from it, then they go back to it. Of course, from a deconstructed position, I can't see how a person can go back into it because but I guess it would depend upon how you deconstructed, what information was utilized to deconstruct. Because once you know a thing is false, I don't understand how a person can go back into it. But I would love to one day hear your story. Hell, if you have time tomorrow to come on to the live, or yeah, no, I'm not gonna say or now. I was gonna say or at the meetup, but at the meetup, I'm probably not gonna have time, or I'm not gonna subject everybody to that. But yeah, at some point, I would love to hear your story because I find that interesting. It's not that I want to counter it, as I'm not gonna try to argue any points. I'm just interested in hearing that. Now, unless you want to have a discussion about it, then we can have a discussion. But my true interest is just I'm curious as to your pathway, your process of deconstructing, and then how you went back to it. That's interesting. I don't think I've heard of people saying that, but they've never explained what made them go back to it, other than some type of emotional, personal experience that they had that then they allocated to that God, or they went through some type of suffering and they felt like that God was punishing them. So that would be interesting to me. So anyway, all right, ladies and gentlemen, it's been great. It's been my honor to be here with you today. Like I said, if you still want to join us, you have a limited amount of time to be able to call the Drury Plaza Hotel and reserve your room, and tell them it's the Free Thinkers Group. You have a very, like, 1 day, 2 days to get it done. Otherwise, it's not going to be done, and I'm going to get stuck with this huge ass hotel bill. So, because I should have did 10 rooms instead of the number of rooms we did, or 15 instead of the number we did. But it's okay. It's all right. You never know how these things are going to go until you first try, and then you go from there. Right. Okay. Oh, he said it's very interesting. My wife was atheist basically, and I didn't want any part of Christianity, but sometimes life hits hard, hits, and scripture helps. It's interesting because if you were living in India and life would have hit hard, then you might have become Hindu or Muslim, and you would believe in Hindu or Islam. If you were living in Tibet, then life would have hit hard, and the scriptures that would have helped you would have been either Taoism or Buddhism. You see, access to certain information and being in certain cultures determine where people's emotions go and the things that help them to come back to something. I took the words right out your mouth. Yeah, that's and that's the thought that I have to take into that, because I could have handed you, you could have went through something difficult. I could have handed you this book, and then you'd have been like, I don't know what the fuck to do. Do I become Hindu? Do I become Buddhist? Do I become Christian? Do I become, and that would be metaphysical Gnostic version of Christianity, or do I become a Taoist? Or I could have handed you a great self-help book. That's the power of thinking, but it's also the power of emotions that, and your environment that you grew up in. Because that same story, that same thing that you're saying, I have heard that from people of a bunch of different religions, that they are so faithful to their religion because when they went through this, their religion, their book helped them get through that thing. And I don't want to take that away from anybody. If you need that, then stay with it. But I just know that every book can do the same thing when you go through some hard times. And I just came to the realization that it is not the book, it is not the God, it is not the angels or anything supernatural in this book that got me through. It was me. When I couldn't feed my family, it was me that got us through that. When the dot-com bubble bursted and the housing market crashed and nobody wanted to do personal training, and I had this huge ass lease for the gyms that I owned, it was me that renegotiated and figured things out to be able to survive. And then it was me that decided, okay, I'm gonna switch businesses and then thrive in the next business. Ain't had nothing to do with no gods, none of that. It was me. But a lot of people during that time frame, they ran back to their churches, they ran back to their mosques. Some of the other trainers I know and the gym owners I know, they was running, they were suffering, they ran back to their different religions and was looking for some fix from that, instead of just looking inside themselves and recognizing that it is within yourself that determines what your outcomes are going to be, right? Some people rose up by going to their church and did great. Some people fell flat on their face by going to their church. Some people, like me, they grew, other people didn't. It all came down to the individual, but I can look at each one of them and I can tell you the real reason is them. Right. That's a good statement. He studied all these different ones, but none of them felt the same. Think about that for a second. He said that he studied Gnostics, studied Kemet, studied Buddhism. I've read the Quran. I've studied Yoruba culture and deities. None of them felt the same. And I've heard your story about your switch as well. Yeah, we would have a great I think we would have a great conversation. But I want you to think about something. None of them felt the same. Have you ever explored why would they not feel the same? Why do you feel the way you feel? And we go through this a lot on this channel. If you grew up, you were born and raised in an American society, unless you are super pro-black, which is one of the things I used to be back in the 90s, 80s and 90s, Kemet won't feel right. Ifa won't feel right. So your Yoruba culture won't feel right because you are American. You are Black American. You are surrounded by churches. You are indoctrinated, whether directly or indirectly, by Christianity and by churches. People around you always thank you, Jesus, oh Lord, all that. You didn't have the influences in your youth of the outer indoctrinations to be able to have that connection. If you were born in Saudi Arabia, you might say, oh, I studied Christianity, I studied all these other ones. The Quran felt right because your outer indoctrinations say this is right because your culture is saying this is right. Your environment, whether the greater environment or the smaller environment, they're all saying Christianity is the right one. Christianity is the way to go because we all have a desire to be accepted by the larger majority. We all have that desire. It's just depending upon some of us act on that more than we should, or act on that when we know we shouldn't have, when we should. A lot of my morality and yours and everybody else's is based on American morality. You go to a whole other country, they have a different morality, right? Even when you live in that country for 10 years, you still hold some of that American morality because that's the part that's indoctrinated on you emotionally from a young age, right? You may even like the other one better, just like I like German morality right now better than I like American morality. But it is because of how it made me feel that I was a Black man who was only identified as a man, not as a Black man. So anyway, that's why I question feelings. A great book written called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. And Napoleon Hill in that book, Outwitting the Devil, talks about the fact that all emotions must be controlled. You cannot allow for your emotions to be too much or too little in any instance, because emotions will cause your critical thinking and your ability to reason through things to falter, to give you false images of things, false ideas of things. And basically, in a nutshell, Napoleon Hill in Outwitting the Devil was saying, fuck your feelings. That you need to think through things, evaluate things, and then make great decisions based on those things that you think through, not what you feel through. Right? So if you've never read Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, it is one of the few books that I have read about 15, 20 times. It is a great, great book. So, and don't just go and listen to a YouTube video audiobook of it, because you can't find the YouTube audiobooks of Outwitting the Devil. You'll have to listen to it like 50, 70 times to actually get it, because when you're listening to an audiobook, your mind wanders too damn much. Read it and you'll know it better. I always suggest reading a book at least a few times before you ever listen to an audiobook. But anyway, I'm going for real because I'm hungry. Y'all have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. Y'all, I'll be producing some other videos in the next couple of hours. So you please look at them, share them if you like them. Y'all have an amazing, amazing Monday. And always remember, you have to free yourself. You have to free yourself to be yourself. I gotta start hawking these shirts since I'm gonna have to pay for a few rooms. Well, percentage of a few rooms. All right, so you gotta free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations, and we're out. Up here.